All right, ladies and gentlemen. So I haven't done a video in a while, so we're going to take this one nice and slow. I also haven't updated my OBS in a million years, and I don't care to do it because every time I do it, it resets my settings all over the place. I have my recording audio, as near as I can tell, down as low as 85%. So we'll see if that goes all right. In theory, unless I'm coughing, I think it'll go into the red. But whatever, we'll just do our best over here. Okay, so the topic of conversation for today is going to be, because I've gotten a lot of requests for this, basically me. I decided that I wanted to redo my. Ugh, thanks for the ads, my dude. What the hell is this? Remove all ads? It's not going to work, is it? No, they're going to make me pay money. Go away. Ugh, I can't stand distractions while I'm talking. It really bothers me. So, anyways, ooh, I know what I can do. I know what we can do. I know. Let's go get the hell out of Gear Planner. Let's go to Talent Calculator. Paladin. Sure, why not? Add still? No? Yes? Go to hell? Whatever. I guess this is just not going to work, and I gotta, like, put this down here. Jesus. Alright, so anyways, what I wanted to do was I wanted to redo all the Paladin classes. Like, if you recall, I did that one video where I talk about, like, all the different Paladin classes for World of Warcraft, like, Holy, Holy Reckoning, Ret Reckoning, and then, like, the various types of Deep Ret are the five, I think those are five, yeah. Let's see, Holy Ret Reckoning, no, whatever. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so there's like five main paladin classes, and then there's like two off-the-cuff weirdos. One of those off-the-cuff weirdos where they're really good, but they're just not as good as X, right? Those are Seal of Command paladins that also have Holy Shock, so they're putting 31 talent points down into Holy Shock, and they're also putting I guess I can cut goddamn ads, please. Why? Why am I getting autistic in my old age? Um, yeah, so they go 31 talent points down into Holy, and then they go the 11 talent points down into Deep, or into Deep Ret, to get Command, and they put the remaining 8 talent points or whatever, wherever the hell else they want to. Personally, I highly suggest that you get Eye for an Eye for a variety of reasons that we'll talk about in later. But I just wanted to go over in general what life is like in Era for all these different paladin classes, if that makes sense. I have an idea. I'm going to pull this up. We're going to go to Tools, Gear Planner, Mage. That's the one I want. And we're going to go Human. And we're going to leave it right there. And I'm literally going to turn off my monitor. All right, that's better. Now I can focus. Okay, so to start off with, life in Era for Paladin is actually not that bad at all, believe it or not. But we need to talk about HP breakpoints in Era because they will greatly dictate both the viability of whatever gear you're messing around with, and will drastically change like your playstyle, if that makes any sense. I got my eyes on you. Love you. Sure, the wife will piss me off here eventually. Okay, so those breakpoints seem to be 5,150 and 5,165. And we're just going to round that up to say 5,200 and 5,700 with basically a 500 point spread between the two. Now, if you are full on autistic like me and you actually want to mathematically calculate where, why, and what the hell is making these breakpoints even a thing, what you can basically do here is you can go into the gear planner like I have on the screen, but again, my monitor's off. And you can gear up certain classes that are extremely bursty, such as Mage and Elemental Shaman, and you can see what their spell power ratios are, what their burst trinkets are looking like, and then you can go and look up their spells, spell power ratios, Damage variance. If you don't know, every single spell in the game, like offensive spell, basically has about 100-point variance on there. They're very consistent in World of Warcraft. It's 100-point variance on the amount of spell damage. So, for example, in whatever the hell phase we are, era, whatever the hell, Nax geared, a fully geared out priest, not priest, mage, for example, their fire blasts are doing 1,000 damage, but in reality they're doing between 900 and 1,000 damage. Their frost bolts do between 1,100 and 1,200 damage. Shamans, lightning bolts are kicking around between 800 and 900 damage base. Their earth shock is the same, 800 to 900 damage. Chain lightning, blah 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 blah. Right. However, when you take into account HP breakpoints, you take the maximum to you don't take the average, you take the maximum. So you're going to hear me talking about how lightning bolts are doing 900 damage, how fire blasts are doing 1,000, how frost bolts are doing 1,200 base, and so forth and so on. But in reality, it's minus 100 from that spread, like 800 to 900 damage. Not, but you'll just hear me say 900 damage. And that becomes important later. Because what will end up happening is I'll end up saying something like your HP breakpoint is 5,200, but that is naturally assuming that everything on the shaman's end high rolls to the maximum, which is why the breakpoint is more realistically like 5,150. But then of course there's RNG on our end, like if we're using Whipper Root or a healing potion to help substitute our HP. That can high roll, that can crit, that can low roll, all that stuff. Okay, so why is all of this important? Why the hell, when I'm making a video about, like, what is life for my Paladin spec that I enjoy the most going to be like in Era? And here I am just sitting around talking about HP breakpoints. Okay, I'll give an example. Okay. So I wanted to try my best at TLDR this point before I get too lost in the weeds here. So the TLDR on it basically is that when you have 5,200 HP, and Elemental Shaman or Mage or some other really bursty class, when they are bursting on you, you have to do one of three things, right? Or you basically only have three options. Option 1 is you bubble, yay. Option 2 is you use a major healing potion. And if you're using major healing potion, that means that you can't use other types of potions, such as use major healing potion to survive their burst. But if you're using major healing potion, that means you can't use like swiftness potion or anything else. It's like using a trinket basically. And then of course the other option is you're going to have to use a Whipper Root Tuber and potentially a Burrower Shell. And you would use them in that order because you're going to use Whipper Root Tuber and you're going to see if Whipper Root Tuber crit heals you or if it high rolls and maybe that's enough HP. If it's not enough HP, then you got to use the Burrower Shell and take it to the face. Or you can bubble. So those are your three options. So the reason why that's an HP breakpoint is because against certain burst classes, you have those three options available to you to survive the burst. Again, those options are bubble, major healing potion, or a lesser healing option such as Whipper Root Tuber and Burrower Shell used back to back. But again, all of that comes at cost, right? So one of those options is using up a trinket slot. Another one of those options is using up our potion slot, which is the same as using up a trinket slot. And of course, bubble is basically best used offensively and not defensively in that manner. But in that case, it might be the same. So it's like whatever. So you have the option to live under those conditions, but it's not very pretty. And then you've got certain specs and certain classes of Paladin, right? That don't give a shit. Like they're running around like 5,200 HP, and they no, the best way to explain this is to go to the other HP breakpoint and then backtrack to that point. My bad. Okay, so the other HP breakpoint by comparison is 5,700. In reality, it's 5,650 because of that high roll low thing we talked about, but we'll just go 5,700. Now, at 5,700 HP or more, what starts happening is that Burrower Shell and Whipperroot Tuber heals alone are enough for you to survive the burst, which means that you're still sitting on three options of surviving the burst. Now you've got your options are Bubble. You could heal Pot if you wanted to. So I guess that's four options. Or you can Whipperroot, or you can Burrower Shell. And the only time Whipperroot is going to fail you is if it like magically rolls like super low, and the enemy magically rolls like high on all their rolls. Then you'll die. But statistically speaking, that's not going to really happen. Um, well, let me just give you a quick example if you prefer examples. So an elemental shaman's burst, all right, at lightning bolts that do like 900 damage and earth shocks that do 900 damage. If they lightning bolt you and they earth shock you and they chain lightning you in your face, all of that put together, if all of that crits, you're gonna take I think it's like 6,100 damage or some crap like that. If a mage is bursting on you, and their burst basically is like fire mage burst looks different, but the numbers are virtually identical. Um, so a frost mage bursting on you is going to be like two frost bolts and then two fire blasts, and then you can start out healing their crap, and they have to sheep you and go for it all over again. If the two frost bolts crit and the two fire blasts do not crit, that's like 2,400 damage per frostbolt times two, and then 1,000 damage per fire blast times two. It ends up getting up there like 6,400 damage, right? In reality, because it's high roll, low roll, it's going to be closer to like 6,200 damage. There's a 400 damage variance on that, so it'll be like between 6,000 and 6,400 damage. At 5,200 HP, plus a healing potion, a major healing potion. I forget what major healing potion does here. I can try to figure it out. Major healing. I think major healing potion caps out at like 1,350. Major he. Come on, internet. There we go. Yeah, so major healing potion, what is that, like an 800 heal spread? On average, it heals for 1,400 HP. It can crit heal. It can also low roll. When your healing potion low rolls, you just Whipperroot and you're perfectly fine, right? But under most circumstances, that extra 1,400 HP is going to come through and save you no problem. So, for example, let's say I got 5,200 HP. I use a major healing potion. Next thing I know, I'm somewhere in the vicinity of 6,600 hit points. I'm going to survive that mage's burst, that shaman's burst, no problem. Even if the healing pot rolled low, we have to remember that the damage spread on the shaman's burst, for example, is like a 300 variance because they're using, three spells to hit you with, and the mages is using four, and there's 100 points per each, blah, 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 right? You're going to fucking survive the vast majority of the time off of major healing potion alone at 5,150-ish HP. No problem, right? No problem at all. Other than the fact that you're using your potion to survive this, which is this kind of the same as using like a trinket. By the time you get up to 5,700-ish HP, Whipperroot Tuber, which heals for an average of 800, right? That's going to give you, like, even if that thing low rolls, you're still at 6,400 HP, no problem. So you're going to survive off of Whipperroot Tuber alone. Because Whipperroot Tuber does between 700 and 900 healing. Come on. Yeah, Whipperroot Tuber, 700 to 900 healing. Burrower Shell is a straight 900 bubble shield, if you didn't know, by comparison. So that's why the breakpoints exist. It's basically so that it's like, hey, here's the minimum amount of HP you need to be able to survive an enemy burst. Your options are Whipperroot Tuber. If Whipperroot Tuber crit heals, which it has a very high chance for you to do. If you don't know... I do believe the critical strike chance of your healing potion and your whip tuber are tied to your stamina, not to like how much bonus stamina you have. They're not tied to like your spell critical strike ratio or anything like that. So they got upwards of like 33% chance to crit heal you. Oh, okay. All right, so let's talk about what life looks like for the different varying types of paladin, right? So let's say you're a Holy Shock paladin. Well, as a Holy Shock paladin, you can get away with having 500, 200 HP and not having to rely on either burr or shell or healing potion, major healing potion, because you got Holy Shock, and Holy Shock is I have no idea how much Holy Shock heals for. I have never used the damn thing. But I assume it's, somewhere around 700, 800, 900 healing. You could always make it like, critical heal, like, oh shit, they're bursting. Let me just make this Holy Shock critical heal. Basically, you have a 20-second on-demand major healing potion if you want to. So you can get away very comfortably off of Holy Shock alone. Jesus Christ. Go away. All right. Right, so you can get away with... Sorry, so Holy Shock's HP breakpoint essentially is 5,200 HP. If you try to make their breakpoint 5,700, suddenly you can use your Holy Shock offensively. I don't really know why you would want to do that. That's potentially a thing, however, in... remember that Paladin build I talked about where they go all the way down, they get Holy Shock, and then they pick up Command, and they have 8 points to spare? You're best off staying in Ret and going down for eye for an eye. Because those examples I gave of burst, right? Like Shaman's bursting on you for like 6,100 damage. If you're reflecting like 30% of that damage back at them, and then on top of that you get to use Holy Shock offensively, and you get to bitch slap them, and you still have your burst trinkets and everything in effect. You can see where that can go really quick. They're dead basically. But yeah, so Holy Shock is kind of like, yeah, whatever, 5,200, I'm good to go. Then you get over to like Control Ret. And Control Ret, for example, he's like, yeah, Control Ret doesn't, he's kind of in the same boat where he doesn't really care if he goes up to 5,700 HP. He doesn't really care if he hits the second breakpoint mark. Why? Because Control Ret Paladins, they've got Repent, they've got Grenade, they've got like Goblin Mortar, they've got like Tidal Charm, and then they have like their 6-second stun on a 35-second cooldown. They're gonna... Bursting into a Control Ret Paladin is hilarious, because like, I'm going to burst you, and then they get hit with some CC, and they're like, fuck. And it basically, they shit on their burst that way. They can easily weave in some Holy Lights here and there. Not Holy Lights, Flash of Lights here and there. They can very easily accomplish survival without having to use Healing Potion pretty easily, right? Then you get into like Ret Reckoning. Where Ret Reckoning, how do I put Ret Reckoning? Ret Reckoning just really they scale really hard with just more HP. So, for example, the best Paladin that I know besides Drakova, or that I should say the best geared Paladin I know besides Drakova, is on his Paladin, he's running around with, I'll give you the stats, and the stats are absolutely terrifying in Era. He's got 5,800 hit points, and he's got like a 5,100 mana bar. And when I looked at and he's Ret Reckoning, and when I looked at his gear, he had like 4-piece Avengers, like 3 or 4-piece Avengers. All I know is that he was wearing a number of Avenger pieces, and he didn't give a flying crap about the 5-set bonus. And I assume that the Avenger pieces and a bunch of other little bits and bobs here and there was what was giving him the 5,100 HP, which is kind of ridiculous. Not HP, 5,100 mana, which is ridiculous. The 5,800 HP is also ridiculous. That is a ridiculously well-statted Paladin. And when I mathed it out, I was like, yeah, he's over the HP breakpoint, no problem. He has mana for days, so he can basically full retard it into the enemy with his mana bar and be perfectly fine. That is a really, really, really scary Ret Reckoning Paladin. Deep Ret Paladins can theoretically do the exact same thing, like Control Ret or Deep Ret Paladins. You can run around with similar stats, but it's not really all that necessary. However, it's really, really nice. Oh yeah, so we're talking about the difference between Deep Ret and then Ret Reckoning, right? So Deep Ret, particularly Control Ret, they don't really need um, healing potion for closing the distance at all because they've got all their range CC abilities, right? Whereas Ret Reckoning is running around basically like, I have to take this shit to the face, and then I have to get on top of the enemy, and then I have to give them the good news, which means they explode, right? And having potion available to use as, swiftness potion or to use as an emergency healing potion if some crazy shit starts happening, they're pretty much good to go. Oh, I should also explain like uh, blah 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 blah. Like when you actually do the math on where the HP breakpoints are versus classes that burst, you'll begin to notice that it's actually closer to like 5,000, right? So you're like, hey, Pally time. If I have 5,000 HP and I use a major healing potion and it heals me for 1,400 on average, and then the enemy's burst variance is between 6,000 and 6,400, or between 5,800 and 6,100 for elemental shamans. Why the hell isn't my HP breakpoint, 5,000? Why is it 5,200 and not, just a straight 5,000 with given all that variance? The answer is because we don't really know if they're using a burst trinket. We don't really know if there's going to be a thorium grenade in there or the like. Like a burst trinket would be a trinket that suddenly bitch slaps you for 500 damage. Like something as simple as Goblin Mortar, right? Like you survive their burst with like an extra 100 HP, and then you're like, yep, I'm gonna start healing myself, and next thing you know, you get like grenade comes out, or Goblin Mortar comes out, or just some burst trinket comes out, and you die, and you're like, huh. Um, Under those conditions, what usually happens is you can see it coming a mile away, and when you have 5,200 HP, what ends up happening is a lot of times your major healing potion will cause you to live just on its own because it can high roll. There's a lot of variance there, but if it basically it's like if an elemental shaman bursts on me and I've got like 100 HP left, and I see them charging up a grenade, let's say I have 100 HP left somehow, some way, after I've even major heal potted, right? I can be like, oh shit, and just love tap the Whipper Root Tuber, and we're good to go. Or I can be like, oh shit, and stun them if I'm a Deep Ret Paladin, or and then start healing myself. Or I can, blah blah blah. You have options basically, whereas you have emergency options in those circumstances. Whereas at 5,000 HP, you're kind of just dead. Honestly, a lot of that extra HP is just in case the Elemental Shaman smacks you. So there's been a lot of times where you'll survive an Elemental Shaman with like 50 HP and then they just melee attack you one time and then you die. Their melee attacks are actually terrifying. They do about 300 damage, which if you're following the math, our 6,100 burst plus 300 is 6,400 damage, identical to the mage. Like I said, everything tends to be rather identical, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so now that we've talked about HP breakpoints and so forth, let's talk about offense and defense and basically what life is like in Phase 6 in general. Okay, so Ret Reckoning Paladins are overpowered as hell. And they're overpowered as hell because of the stats that I just gave you. The Ret Reckoning Paladins are running around with 5,800 HP. They're at the high-end breakpoint, not the low-end breakpoint, which means they got all kinds of crazy shit that they can do with their potion and their trinket and all that stuff. And a lot of times the Ret Reckoning Paladins are running around with Burrower Shell Trinket. They're not afraid to use major healing potions or swiftness potions. They're not afraid to use all kinds of other potions. It's actually kind of terrifying. Potions are extremely cheap in Season of Mastery, so expect them to be all over the place. The reason for this is because people will go and raid Nax and GDKPs. They'll come out of a Nax GDKP with 7,000 gold or some crap like that. And then the potions they're using are like 1G a piece. So you can see where we're going with this. Like at most they're like 3 or 4 gold, and yeah. So expect people to be using potions all over the damn place. I'm not just talking major healing potions. I'm talking like free action potions, swiftness potions, purification potions. I think that's the one that like keeps cleansing the shit out of you, like removing curses and cheats and shit. Potions. So potions are really powerful in phase 6. Reckoning Paladins, despite having all of that, all those terrifying stats, still hit like an absolute truck, and they tend to delete things when they hit them. There's this weird thing about Nax gear, and this is the reason why I have this stupid mage pulled up here. There's this weird element in Nax geared classes where okay, so what changed in Nax gear, which is error, right, is that everyone's damage went up. Everyone's armor went up. But, like, basically spell power went up, melee damage went up, and then armor went up. But HP doesn't really go up. So, for example, our mage here is a fire mage. He has a whopping not even 4,000 HP. And this is the scariest fire mage that you can run into, theoretically, because he has all of the magic, most of the magic penetration gear. So he like minus 20 to target resistance here, another minus 20 to target resistance there. I think there's another little bit around here somewhere. He's got Atiesh, but there's like this staff they can put on that also gives them minus 2 magic resistance. Us paladins are always afraid of, classes that are wearing gear that has magical penetration, right? Like spell pen. But if you actually look into spell pen from the enemy caster's perspective, it is terrible. So, for example, we have the AV ring here, which has no spell power. It improves your critical strike by 1%. It's got a non-existent stamina of 7, and then it's got the magic damage reduction. This is a terrible ring. And it's only for priests, mages, and warlocks. So, you won't see shamans running around with this damn thing. Then you've got this other one that has no stamina on it whatsoever, dog shit stats, but it also, reduces enemy magic resistance, which you might see shamans running around with. And then there's a staff for the mages that, also does the same thing, but it doesn't have much or less stamina than Atiash's great staff. And then we're sitting at almost full tier 3, yeah, for this mage. Blah, 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 blah. What it basically means is mages that don't have the spell penetration rings are about 4,160 HP. Mages that do have the spell penetration rings are less than 4,000 hit points. And this is kind of a big deal. Because mages in Phase 6 are essentially just as squishy. They basically have the exact same stats. Like, if you actually go and you put this mage into full tier 2, you'll find that he has identical stamina in full tier 2 as he does in full tier 3, and the amount of armor he gains from tier 3 as opposed to tier 2 is basically negligible. So, in essence, the mages are stupidly squishy now, because, like I said, in Nax gear, melee damage went up, spell damage went up, and then armor value went up. But basically, yeah, so when paladins touch mages now, they explode. And the horrible thing about this for mages as well is that a lot of mages are running around as fire mages, right? There's not a lot of frost mages running around. And they don't really realize this, the mages, I don't think. But holy deep ret paladins and holy reckoning paladins traditionally struggle to generate enough damage in a very short period of time. And this could also be said for the Special Boy Holy Shock Paladin, the Command Shock Paladin. All three, basically every paladin except Ret Reckoning, traditionally has struggled to generate enough damage in a short enough period of time to threaten to kill mages, right? Before we get sheeped again. In Phase 6 gear, this doesn't really happen anymore, especially against fire mages. Because the fire mages, basically, they don't have that bubble shield of 800 HP anymore. So they're running around with about 4,000. They're running around with about 4,400 effective HP when you calculate in their armor, as opposed to 5,200 HP, which is like the frost mages. And because there has been a damage spike from the next gear, suddenly deep ret paladins and holy reckoning paladins actually can effectively one shot fire mages, which is really, 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 really bad for them. And this also goes for the deep shock holy paladin that I was talking about, the command paladin, when they actually pick up eye for an eye, because the fire mage will open up on them. They'll end up taking like 2,000 damage or some crazy crap like that just from eye for an eye. And then the holy shock paladin having plenty of HP to spare. In other words, they have plenty. They've hit their HP break point to the point where they don't even need holy shock to win the day. They just used major healing potion to survive the damn thing, and now they're like swinging and shocking into this 2,000 HP fire mage with a really high probability of deleting them out of existence, especially since mathematically they haven't used any burst trinkets yet. So you throw in some burst trinkets and you're good to go. I did some math and some research because I was doing rank 3. I play on Era. They forced me to change my name. My current name is Convictions, so you won't see any Paladin anymore. But if you look up Convictions, that's my new Paladin. I had to do rank 13, and while I was doing rank 13, dusting and so forth out in Silizist, I tested all the trinkets for any weird things I could find, and I found that Goblin Mortar is the only trinket. No, not Goblin Mortar. Goblin Bomb. Goblin Bomb Dispenser is the only trinket in the game that actually doesn't share a cooldown with everything else. So you can use a burst trinket that does instant damage along with Goblin Bomb Dispenser, and that's like the only other burst damage trinket in the entire game that you can use with it. It has some other weird features going on. Jesus. It has some other weird features going on that... such as you can pop it before combat, you can even mount up. It follows you around like a really speedy pet, even while you're mounted. If it gets within like 15 yards of anything, though, it aggroes onto them, goes over there and blows them up. It's got some HP. It's like a pet. You can target it and kill it, but other than that, it's like an instant extra burst thing. The moral of the story is that fire mages are extremely susceptible to just about any and all paladin burst. Holy Shock Paladins, if they have eye for an eye, can take them out. Deep Control Ret Paladins can take them out pretty easily because they're not doing all their extra bubble shield healing stuff. They eat the damage a hell of a lot more. Ret Reckoning Paladins are still insane. If I had to do a general overview on the classes, it would be this. Certain classes have become more viable. So the Holy Shock Command Paladin with Eye for an Eye is significantly more valuable in Era because everyone's running around with like really high crit chance and they're throwing around a lot of spell damage, but their HP didn't increase. Right? Nax gear has not increased enemy HP pools like at all. Melee classes went up in HP. Like rogues didn't really go up much in HP. Almost no spellcaster went up in HP. Paladins and warriors, however, went up in HP. Hunters went up in HP. Shamans didn't go up in HP, but they went up in armor, but they went up in armor decently to a rather decent degree, so it's noticeable. So Command Shock Paladin, eye for an eye Command Shock Paladin is actually quite good because they're just doing enough damage all of a sudden. Deep Holy Paladin is still pretty damn good because they're doing plenty of damage. They have plenty of survivability, and they can just time on target people to death. Holy Reckoning is doing extremely well, especially for we'll talk about that later because that's my bread and butter. That's what I know. Prop Paladin is still pretty meh. In my, to be perfectly honest with you, you can make it work, especially with Avengers and a bunch of other gear. Prop Paladin just really suffers from the fact that he needs a mana bar, and it's kind of hard to get a mana bar on him. But he's all right. Prop Paladin is okay. He's just outshined by all the other specs, basically. Rut Reckoning is still Super Saiyan of all the Paladins. However, there is a bit of a contender for top dog with Ret Reckoning Paladins in Control Ret. Control Ret in Season, in Era, is kind of insane. Um, Now, I say this, but this is a half-ass speculative insane. This is me and Drakova sitting down and talking about the potential capability of Control Ret in era gear, like when they actually have the gear, because he doesn't like to play it enough to test it, and he doesn't have enough gear to test it. But it's actually kind of nuts. The reason why it's nuts is again, all the difference in Phase 6 is everyone's doing more damage. Not everyone increased in HP. And the major issue with Deep Ret Paladin, and especially Control Ret Paladin, was their damage. They were just on the edge of doing enough damage. They basically had the Holy Reckoning problem, which is like, we're just on the edge of doing enough damage to be a monster, but we can't quite do enough damage, so it's kind of holding us back. Suddenly, in Era, we're doing enough damage. So if you actually sit down and do the math, I did some math on Deep Ret Paladin, Control Ret specifically. So Control Ret Paladin. Oh god, I could sit here and talk about an hour. Try to summarize. I think the best summary would be it used to be that you needed like 1 in 4 attacks RNG would go good your way, meaning you run up to the enemy, you auto attack them, and only 1 in 4 of those RNGs, of those auto attacks would have a high enough RNG on it to where you would feel comfortable pulling the trigger to try to kill a motherfucker from there, right? Only 1 in 4. And that might sound weird, like why 1 in 4? But really, when you walk up and you smack somebody with your two-handed weapon as a Deep Ret Paladin, it's like, okay, well, there are like 4 possibilities. It's like, white hit, no crit, and nothing else. Or you get white hit and it crit, but nothing else. Or you get white hit, no crit, with a command proc that also didn't crit. And then the fourth and final option, which is the one where, not fourth and final option, then you get a white hit that crit, that proc command that didn't crit. You can get a white hit that didn't crit, that proc command that did crit. Or the Holy Grail, which is your white hit crits and command procs, and it also crits. You could only really pull the trigger on offense under a scenario where you got a double hit and at least one of those crit, right? Which is only 3 out of those possibilities. And if you sit down and do the math on it, you'll realize that's like 1 in 4 auto attacks. So it used to be that like 1 in 4 auto attacks as a Deep Ret Paladin, you could pull the trigger on with all your extra CC and stuff to try to do enough damage to kill somebody. By the time you get into Nax gear, that math changes to about a 1 in 3. Which is a significant enough of a deal to make you far, far, far more reliable, based upon the sheer number of RNG swings that you can make into the target, right? Because again, you have all that CC that you can do to them. You can heal up, you can catch them, you can do this, you can do that. You're basically just hitting really effing hard now, to the point where you run up to someone, you hit them, and you get a double hit, but you don't get any crit. and you might still be able to just pull the trigger on them anyways. Because your subsequent attacks, if they do good, you can kill them. It's really weird. I don't know how to describe it. They're just doing enough damage to get the job done with more mathematical frequency. Mm. There are other weird things about Control Rep Paladin, such as what is the best weapon for them. Um, if you actually sit down and do the math, you might think Might of Minithil is the best weapon for a Control Rep Paladin. And I'm not going to say you're wrong, but I'm going to say you're wrong. And here's why. We already talked about how they don't need to hit the higher level RNG cap. And I'm not enough of an expert with Deep Control Ret to say definitively that I know what the hell I'm talking about here. But I'm going to postulate on this, okay? So while I'm talking, Drakova might be like, no, 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 you're stupid. Get a Might of Minithil. Here's why. Blah, 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 blah. All right, cool. I don't know Deep Control Ret well enough to make that call. But I'll make this point. When you're wielding weapons like, say, Dark Edge of Insanity, which is a 3.5 speed weapon with a disorient 3-second disorient proc chance, or you're wielding something like Hand of Rag. Those are basically your 3 weapon options for Deep Ret, and they are Hand of Rag, Dark Edge of Insanity, or Might of Minithil. And while Might of Minithil has by far the highest stats, like HP bonus, it's got strength in there. It's just like a Giga Chad beat stick. We can go over here. I made my point with the mage specs, showing you how low their HP is, how their stats are even more terrible if they go with the pen gear. We'll talk more about that later. Blah 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 blah. Let's head on over to the Paladin side of things. Okay, so if I click this, it should pull up Might of Minithil. Yeah, so Might of Minithil compared to Hand of Rag, we'll just do a cross. Actually, let's compare it to Dark Edge. Dark Edge. Do I have to type in dark? Alright, I'm going to D. Dark Edge of Insanity. Okay, cool. Oh, no. Let's make this MOM real fast. Thank you, game. I love it. It's beautiful. Thank you. And then we'll go look at Dark Edge of Insanity. Okay, cool. Alright, so you can see Might of Minithil is kicking around with, it's got a shitload of stats, particularly in the stamina department. It has about 9 more DPS, effectively, than the Dark Edge of Insanity. It is a slower weapon at 3.8, and it comes with 2% critical strike chance. It's a bit of a beast, to be sure. But then Dark Edge of Insanity, 19 agility is definitely that's like 1.5% critical strike chance or some shit like that. So it's like, hey, he comes with crit. He comes with a little bit less stamina, but not the end of the world, and he comes with a bit more strength. Make no mistake, Might of Minithil hits harder and makes you more survivable than Dark Edge of Insanity. But Dark Edge of Insanity comes with his damn proc. And it's such a fast weapon at 3.5 speed that this disorient proc that comes out of it can basically get you an extra auto attack out of it. On top of that, if you actually look at the sequence of events, like, I hit you with this, I hit you with that, I stun you with this, I stun you with that, a Deep Ret Paladin is going for when they're trying to kill somebody, what you'll find is that having a faster weapon, particularly you want about a 3.6, 3.7 speed weapon, somewhere around there is ideal. And the 3.5 speed weapon on Dark Edge of Insanity is not the end of the world. Like, it's actually pretty damn good. So blah blah blah. I'm trying to say you don't actually need a Might of Minithil in order to have a really good weapon for Deep Ret Paladin. Part of the reason for that is, okay, so let's now go to Hand of Rag. Let's compare all this to Rag. So the other really good weapon for Deep Ret Paladin that I'm convinced is a really good weapon is Hand of Rag. Now, Hand of Rag compared to Might of Minithil, it's got way less stats. There's like 340 hit points less. That's a significant reduction. It's doing like 15, yeah, about 15 less DPS. It's it's a faster weapon at 3.7, but 3.7 is a really sexy weapon speed for Paladin. 3.6 I think is the ideal weapon speed, but 3.7 is where you can start doing some other interesting stuff. The reason for this is because if we, stun a target for 6 seconds and then we stun them for 3 seconds with the nade, we will have a total stun time of 7.5 seconds because of diminishing returns. Well, 3.8 speed, that's like, 6.6 seconds? Yeah, 6.6 seconds. You can see that's a little slow, which means things get a little difficult to wield at 3.8 speed. Because at 3.8 speed, you actually have to swing into the target, then stun them for 6 seconds, then throw the grenade, and you don't have much leeway to screw that up mechanically whatsoever. And if you do it just right under those circumstances, you'll get the 2 auto attacks in before the enemy can do anything, right? Whereas if you're working with Hand of Sulfuras, for example, you can stun the target first and then swing into them. Which causes you to do significantly more damage because they don't have block, dodge, and parry on the table because they're stunned. And at 7.4 seconds for 2 auto attacks, that all fits very comfortably into your 7-second stun combo, right? And then of course, 3.6 seconds is the ideal. Because it's the best balance of convenience and at that point, you can stun the target from like 10 yards away and then put the auto attack into them, and you still have plenty of time to get out both your auto attacks, and it's not mathematically challenging or mechanically challenging or anything. Meaning, you throw your grenade when they have like an extra 10 seconds of stun left to go. Everything's fine. It's all fine. There's also leeway in the game of I think of like 0.10 seconds or like non-existent leeway or some shit like that. Blah 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 blah. Moral of the story is if you're relying on some combination of stunning the crap out of your enemy and beating them to death, 3.8 weapons aren't all that great. The faster weapons are actually really good. Wow. But not too fast, of course. Let me take a drink here. Now, the reason why Hand of Rag is really good is it also comes with this stupid proc. And the major killer, as near as I can tell, so here's me making my argument for Hand of Rag over, say, Might of Minithil, or Dark Age of Insanity over Might of Minithil, even though I don't know this spec well enough to, pure speculation on my part, right? But when I do the math, what causes deep control ret to suck is you're highly dependent upon RNG. And as a class that is highly dependent upon RNG, it really behooves you to start stacking more RNG, because the more RNG things that could go off in your favor, the next thing you know, you're no longer RNG dependent because you're throwing so many dice at the problem that RNG doesn't really matter anymore. And Might of Minithil isn't really bringing that to the table, but a weapon like Hand of Rag and Dark Edge of Insanity are bringing that element to the table, which is desperately needed for like a deep ret control paladin. So, for example, Hand of Rag, the proc chance on this thing is slightly under 5%. I think it's like 4.8% or something like that, according to this website, blah, 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 blah. I'm just going to say 5%. For the sake of my sanity. So when you're using Seal of Righteousness, now this is another important point. I don't know at what point it changed. I don't even know if it did change. I remember I tested it back in the day. This is a huge point with Era. Okay, bear with me. If you made it through far this video, pay attention. Wake up. Okay, you paying attention? Are we still there? Cool. Almost 50 minutes this video, and I'm telling you to wake the hell up. Okay. In Era, us paladins can seal twist. Drakova has a bunch of videos on this, and you can seal twist just about anything. Okay, so when you're a when you are a command paladin, when you have seal of command, and you run up and you bitch slap somebody, you can what you'll do is you'll run up with Seal of Righteousness. you'll swing into them, and right as you're swinging into them, you'll twist into command, and you'll hit them both with SOR, Seal of Righteousness, and you'll hit them with command all at the same time. Okay. Other options are, of course, twisting Seal of Justice, for example. So as a Holy Reckoning Paladin, I don't have Seal of Command, but I can swing. I can twist Justice in there as well. And being a Reckoning Paladin, there's like they're getting stunned. If you don't know Seal of Justice, oh God, Seal of Justice. Let's talk about that for a second before I get back onto this point. Seal of Justice, I forget. It's like, if I remember correctly, it's a 10% chance to proc. Let's listen to me on this, okay? 10% chance to proc per 1 second of swing speed. So if you swing Might and Minithil at somebody and you have Seal of Justice on, it's got like a 38% chance to stun the target for 2 seconds. Other weird mechanics about it are that the stun is on its own separate GCD, which means that you can stun the target for 6 seconds, then bitch slap them with Seal of Justice and stun them for 2 more seconds for a total of 8 seconds. If you bitch slap them again and it's Seal of Justice stunned, the next Seal of Justice stun would be 1 second, and then if you grenaded them after that, the grenade stun would be 1.5 seconds. Seal of Justice is on its own separate diminishing returns thingamabob, all right? On top of that, it can proc multiple times in a Wreck Bomb, or like, let's say, you white hit and it procs, and you command hit them and it also procs. Yeah. They can double proc. So, for example, when I run up with Wreck Bomb and I Seal a Twist Justice, sometimes it procs twice in the bomb, and the target's only stunned for 1 second because it procced twice and it's suffering from diminishing returns. I am not sure if it times 2 with SOR or not. I don't think it does. I could be wrong about that. But I do know that mathematically speaking, when I run up and I Wreck Bomb somebody with my Seal of Justice twist, it's like a 150% chance to proc. Meaning sometimes it won't proc, sometimes it'll proc once for 2 second stun, and sometimes it'll proc twice for a 1 second stun. And then once in a blue moon, it procs multiple times and is basically like a 0.5 second stun. But all of that is actually quite useful under a variety of circumstances. But let's get back to our point with Deep Rep Paladin. So Deep Rep Paladin can run up to somebody and be like, yeah, I'm just going to twist Seal of Justice and command, and then judge command into you for damage. And the next thing you know, Hand of Rag's got something stupid like a 2.4, 2.5% times proc rate, blah, 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 blah. So proc values for Control Rep Paladins are actually up in value, because every time you're doing your joust, you can basically do a Seal twist. And not only do you gain extra damage from the SOR, you'll gain about 100 damage from SOR if you, for the record. But you're also doubling the proc value of oils, you're doubling the proc value of whatever weapon you're using, and so forth and so on. And if you start doing the math on that, you're like, okay, well, Hand of Rag's got like a 10% chance to proc with SOR. It's probably closer to like a 13% chance to proc with Seal of Command. And then I have to compare the value of this thing's proc chance to like 2% extra critical strike. Like, what does that look like in an RNG scenario? And so then you go through your possibilities again, right? Where you're sitting back and you're like, okay, well, I run up and I auto attack you. What happens? And you're like, okay, well, it could be a white hit. It could just miss, but let's not count that. We know that's bad. It could be a white hit with no procs whatsoever, no criticals. Awesome. It could be this, it could be that, it could be this other thing. What a proc weapon like what Might of Minithil is doing for you is that it is making it less likely that you'll run up to the target and you'll white hit them and your command will proc, but you get no crits whatsoever. But it's only making it very less likely that will happen. Meanwhile, what the hell is Hand of Rag doing over here? Hand of Rag is basically saying, it's like, hey, if you run up to somebody and you white hit them and command procs, and neither of those crit, there is still something stupid, like a 13% chance that, like, two. Like a 13% chance that Hand of Rag just decides to go Bleh! Super Saiyan. There's also a good chance that the oils go off and go Super Saiyan. And it might actually be enough damage for you to pull the trigger on some stuff. Hmm. Especially since you have subsequent chances to do similar things. So, for example, if you run up and you hit somebody, and you white hit, you command hit them, that's about 1100 damage. Nothing crit, so you're like, oh, I only did 1100 damage in the joust. But for some reason, Hand of Rag decided to go off, and an oil decided to go off. Next thing you know, you've done like an extra 600 points of damage to the target. The target just took like 1700 HP loss, and you're like, oh, all right, well, maybe I'd pull the trigger on this because, the oil decided to go off and the rag decided to go off, and that is you compare that to what if you got no procs whatsoever, but you got like one of those to crit, like the command proc crit, for example. If command proc crits, that's like an extra it's like an extra 700 damage because of vengeance and all that stuff. Next thing you know, you're doing like 500 plus 700 damage. No, 500 plus 1400 damage. No, 500 plus 1300 damage. You're at 1800 damage. So one of them, everything went off, and you did like 1700 damage. The other one, everything went off, and you did 1800 damage. That's close enough to pull the trigger on some stuff. And so my point is that as a deep rep paladin with Might of Minithil, you're living in a world where it's like it used to be 1 in 4 of your auto attacks you could pull the trigger on. Now it becomes 1 in 3 auto attacks you could pull the trigger on. But if you're using things like Ragnaros and Seal Twisting, or Dark Edge of Insanity and Seal Twisting, next thing you know, it's like every 2.5 auto attacks, give or take, you can pull the trigger on some stuff. Mind you, Might of Minithil has more stamina, and it has more 15 more DPS. But even when you do the math on that, it's not worth it compared to the RNGesus of, because again, I could talk about this for an hour. Let's just move on, okay? All right, so let's talk about Holy Reckoning, because the Reckoning life basically is, do I have enough HP? Do I have enough damage? And we all know that you're going to have enough HP and you're going to have enough damage, the end, right? Oh, can I get a hold of the target and kill them? And it's like, yeah, if you have 5,800 HP, you don't have to use your healing potion to live anymore. Therefore, you can use a swiftness potion. Or you could use the healing potion and have like some more closing-oriented trinkets, like Goblin Mortar and Tidal Charm, for example, or Nifty Stopwatch or something. You're going to catch them, you're going to kill them. Life doesn't change all that much in Era, other than you become a bit more of a Chad. Deep Rep Paladins are also going Super Saiyan, for the reasons that I just talked about a bunch. Deep Holy is really good as long as you are picking up Eye for an Eye. So the Eye for an Eye Holy Shock Paladin is actually a thing in Era, just because you end up doing enough damage. It's kind of like a control ret scenario, where the enemy bursts on you, they can't quite kill you. Like, again, let's say a shaman opens up on you, right? They burst on you as one of those paladins. They're taking like 2,800 damage on themselves from Eye for an Eye alone. So taking 30% of like 6,100 damage, or like 6,000 damage on average, right? So they are not happy. 30% of that's 6,000 times 3. Is that only 1,800? Oh my goodness. Come on, you can do it. I have faith in you. Yeah. My computer's like, oh my god. What have you done to me? 6,000 times 0.3 equals 1,800 damage. Right, but that extra 1800 damage is more than worth it. So they take like 18. Keep in mind, elemental shamans have only like 5,000 HP. They're actually not that heavy on HP. They're really heavy on armor because they put a lot into their damage that they actually get reduced armor, reduced HP pools. So they take 1800 damage from eye for an eye, and then you walk up and you bitch slap them with like let's say you survive that, no problem. You used a healing potion to survive it, no problem. You holy shock them. I have no idea how much damage a holy shock critical does. I'm just gonna say it does like 1,000. Probably does way more than that though. Let's be perfectly honest. Is it 1,200? 900, 450. Yeah, what? It does way more than that. Come on, bro. So let's say you use your holy shock to fuck off. Let's say you use your holy shock to do the free critical holy shock. I'm just gonna say it does closer to 1,300 damage. That's probably more accurate. Our elemental shaman friend is down 3,100 HP already out of his 5,000 some or so odd HP, and you can see where Hand of Rag, Seal Twisted, Command into Seal of Righteousness twisted into Command can do a thing. Because Command's going to come out there and do like an extra 900 damage, give or take, because usually these are spell power builds. Seal of Righteousness won't hit for crap. At best, it'll hit for like 110. Let's be realistic here, like 110, give or take. And you can see we're getting, and then Command may or may not proc and just kill them outright. You may or may not get a crit in there and just straight up kill them outright. Hand of Rag might go Super Saiyan. There's an oil involved there, which can come in and just kill them outright. And then if for some fucking reason this elemental shaman is still alive, we haven't even touched our burst trinkets yet. So you can very easily see that Eye for an Eye is doing so much damage here, along with the Seal Twist and everything else, that Homeboy is dead. Homeboy is deady dead. And yeah, so that Paladin's actually doing really good in Era, believe it or not, and should be considered quite viable. Deep Holy is not quite as good because everything Deep Holy is still heavily reliant on the time and target shenanigans. Deep Holy is still in a position where Deep Holy is still in a position where they die to frost mages. They struggle versus fire mages, but they can kill them. They can kill them because the mage doesn't have the 30-second cooldown 800 HP shield anymore because it's a fire mage and not a frost mage, right? And they're running around like 4,000 HP, so you just smacking them with Holy Shock every now and then is doing work on its own, let alone all the other stuff that you're doing to them. So it's a bit more of a fight. It's a bit fairer. It can go one way or the other. There's room for outplay with reflectors and all that stuff. Deep Holy has the potential to actually kill fire mages. They still die horribly to frost mages, and nothing you can do about it. But then just about every other class and its dog, they tend to beat up pretty badly. They struggle somewhat versus elemental shamans, but only in the sense that they struggle versus to kill elemental shamans. They don't struggle to out-heal elemental shamans bullshit and then kill them while they're right? So if you guys are in like a dueling scenario or a fight to the death, elemental shamans aren't a problem for Deep Holy all that much because you can just out-heal them and wear them down. It's not really that big of a deal. They're still a super time on target oriented build though. I've actually so I still don't have a two-headed weapon for my Paladin, believe it or not. I don't even have Hand of Rag. I still don't have Hand of Rag, which means that I've just been living a life of I'm a Holy Reckoning Paladin that is time on target one-hander because I don't have a two-hander and I don't have Holy Shock. This has been my entire World of Warcraft experience in Classic so far. And I make it work as Holy Reckoning even without Holy Shock. And I'm painfully aware that if I did have Holy Shock, it would be even better. So I am painfully aware that deep holy one-hander builds are still absolutely terrifying to the vast majority of classes in Era. All right, what else do I want to say on the subject? Uh, what changes for Deep Holy? Not all that much. Right. So talking about Holy Reckoning and talking about Deep Holy they're virtually the same animal when they go into the one-hander playstyle. So anything I have to say about Holy Shock Paladin is virtually identical to what I have to say about Holy Reckoning. So let's go talk about Holy Reckoning for a second. All right. So the first thing to note about one-hander builds is that redemption, redem, re. I guess it won't be the name. Whatever. Let's just go level because that's going to be the redemption ring immediately. Come on. No, oh, these are trinkets. Derp. No wonder it didn't come up. Yeah, redemption ring, highest ring in the entire game. Okay, so look at the 2-set bonus of Tier 3. The 2-set bonus of Tier 3 is increase the amount healed by your Judgment of Light by 20. Okay, Judgment of Light by 20. Not Seal of Light, Judgment of Light by 20. And it can be easily incorporated into most builds because, ring plus other piece of gear, and boom, you get the 2-set bonus, right? All right, so I've done the math on some of this, and basically the math comes out to be something like this. Seriously? What the fuck is my computer doing? Like, dude, I want to pull up the calculator. Look, homie. Bruh. All right, thank you. All right, so the math basically pans out something like this. Like, let's say you're running around with, like, Edward the Odd. Oh, right. Oh, God. We talk about one-handed Paladin for a second, and then we'll move on to Holy Reckoning, okay? Because they're the same animal when they're going one-handed playstyle, and I'm the one-handed playstyle time on target Paladin guy. So let's do this a second, right? Okay. So the absolute best weapon there is in the entire game for one-handed Holy Paladin is theoretically Hungering Cold, right? 1.5 second speed, 14 stamina, also comes with some armor. It increases sword skill by +6, and it has a whopping 73 DPS. The problem is, if you compare, now you might think to yourself, okay, what about like the Spellblade? So there's like a Spellblade in Nax, Wraithblade, Wraithblade right here. 1.8 second speed, comes with stats. DPS is basically terrible. It's not that much more than like Flurry Axe or all the other one-handers. Edward the Odd actually has more DPS than it. The critical strike chance of spells, negligible. It's the fact it comes with 95 spell power. If you compare all the Nax one-hander options to something as simple as Flurry Axe. So to recap, the top one-handed weapons for a one-handed Paladin are in order, in DPS, in order, Flurry Axe, which is a level 42 auction house bind on equip epic. Flurry Axe. Number 3, or second highest DPS and the most well-rounded is Hakari Manslayer because it has 100% spell power ratio behind it. And the lifesteal doesn't care about like Mortal Strike or anything like that. 10% chance to proc. When you're running around in your spell power gear, it'll suck like 400 HP from the target. Pretty gross stuff. Then the last one, of course, is Edward the Odd. So Edward the Odd does the least amount of DPS, and just to be absolutely clear on this, if you're at 300 spell power, give or take, no, that's not true. If you're at 500 spell power with Judgment of Crusader on the target, meaning your Paladin has like 330 spell power, and you've put like your 170 some or so odd spell power, Judgment of the Crusader on target. You're sitting at like 500 effective spell power versus the target, but for holy damage, but for the purposes of oils and stuff, you're still around 330 damage. The following math pans out correct. Okay, so Flurry Axe is the number one DPSer at doing something stupid like 6,100 damage, or I think it's like 6,600 actually. 6,600 damage in 60 seconds of wailing on the enemy. Flurry Axe with those ratios will do 6,600 HP damage to a 40% armored target. Okay, scary stuff. The second highest performer is Hikari Manslayer, which does 6,000 damage, but it will also heal you for like 1,200. You'll get like 3 or 4 procs in there. 1,200. Okay, so Hikari Manslayer is this well-rounded monster, especially at like 2-second speed. If you have Reckoning and Parry Haste and all that stuff, right? It does a really nice split of healing, potential burst damage, even though Flurry Axe will also burst out his ass from time to time. Like I've hit things with Flurry Axe, and then like I hit a guy one time with Flurry Axe, and the Flurry Axe decided it wanted to proc like 7 times, so the guy got hit like 8 times instantly, like whoop 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 whoop, like wind furied him to death. It's pretty fucking hilarious. But yeah, so Manslayer is a good mix of the two between damage and healing. And then Edward the Odd is kicking around at like 4,600 damage, but he'll heal for like 4,000 healing, assuming your holy lights are doing like 2,000 healing, which depending upon what you're doing as a holy paladin may or may not be the case. Like, do you have Mortal Strike on you? Are you using your crit heal on Edward the Odd? This is obviously not factoring in your critical strike chance on your heals, because we're assuming 2,000 holy lights. Maybe you're a Reckoning Paladin or a Deep Ret Paladin who's wearing spell gear, and you're going one-hander with Edward the Odd, and therefore your holy lights are only 2,000. You don't have a lot of crit chance. You don't have the free crit. Blah 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 blah. There's a lot of variations here, but just know that Edward the Odd is healing like an absolute Chad, and his DPS is also kind of good. Not the highest DPS. Now, if you compare all these stats to Hungering Cold, right, under these exact same conditions, 330 spell power with 330 spell power, and then Seal of Righteousness. Oh, by the way, all these numbers are without oil. It's just your auto attack damage, plus whatever proc chances are going on, and then SOR. So there's not really oil factored in here to all this damage. I didn't go that crazy with it. Oil only becomes a factor when you're trying to calculate for the damn Spellblade, right? So that's why I brought that up. But Hungering Cold, basically it does against a 40% armored target. My bad, not a 40%, a 30% armored target. He's doing like 5% more damage than Flurry Axe, and I'm not joking about this. And what this means is that the more armored the target is, Flurry Axe becomes the higher DPSing weapon. The less armored the target is, the better performing Hungering Cold becomes against that target. So Hungering Cold, theoretically, under certain circumstances, is the highest DPSing one-hander weapon for a paladin in the game. But under other circumstances, you're better off with Flurry Axe, and then other circumstances, you're better off with Manslayer or Edward the Odd. And it's just like, oh my god. So Hungering Cold does become part of the holy trinity of one-handed weapons for one-handed paladin playstyle, but he's not blowing everything out of the water and then making himself a must-have weapon. You can get along just fine with the original holy trinity of Edward the Odd, Manslayer, and Flurry Axe. Flurry Axe being the king of everyone and his dog. Now, why did I bring up the two-piece tier 3? Okay. Um, if you do the math on two-piece tier 3, some shit starts getting really scary really fast, and keep in mind that as Holy Paladins, we are... like you can see, I have 2 points in Lasting Judgment. I've always had 2 points in Lasting Judgment. It's amazing in raids. The reason why I really fancy this in raids is because you get to be the paladin you have low DPS, but you bring so much utility to all the people who are trying to parse that they love you and they want to give you gear to keep you around. They don't give a shit that your healing sucks. Because you are so useful to them anyways, because you're the judging paladin in raids. Also, you make the other holy paladins happy, because number one, as a PvPer, you don't really care about the healing gear. You want the other stuff, so you can talk to them about, hey, I'll give you healing priority if you give me a PvP gear priority. On top of that, you're not messing around with their parses, so there's more stuff to heal in the raid. Therefore, they are often more stuff to heal in the raid. They can parse better. Therefore, everyone's happier when you're Lasting Judgment Paladin, basically. However, in PvP, under certain circumstances, Lasting Judgment is absolutely amazing, and we're about to talk about this. Tier 3 only makes Lasting Judgment even more amazing, and we're about to talk about this. Okay, gear. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. Calculator, right. So, let's say you're running around with like Edward the Odd, and you've decided that you're going to do Edward the Odd, lifesteal on Edward the Odd, and you're going to have two-piece tier 3, and you are going to judge light on the target, and your judgment of light lasts like 40 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever the hell, right? So it's not getting off of them no matter what. And there's certain targets that this is really effective against. Warriors it's super effective against. Rogues it's super effective against. Druids it's super effective against. Shadow Priests it's actually surprisingly effective against. Even though you'd think you'd want to have wisdom on them, it's actually not that bad. It's also really good on warlocks. Basically, anything that is going to tell you to fuck off from them and you're not going to be able to get back on top of them for a long period of time, this seal is actually amazing compared to Crusader, for example, because it's just going to stick on them with you having plenty of time to make it back to the target to make it work. All right, so Edward the Odd, and I can do the math here real fast. 105 minus 40 equals 65. So Edward the Odd by himself, with holy lights that are healing for 2,000, he's at about 65 HPS, meaning Edward the Odd, his proc value with SOR rolling SOR on him, he'll heal you for about 65 HP per second. He'll proc like twice a minute, or like once every 30 seconds, give or take, right? And every time he procs, it's like 2,000 HP, and you do the math on that, and it's like, it's like 2,000 divided by 30 for the seconds. And, oh, look, it's like 65. Okay, we get it, right? Ha 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 ha. Damn it, what is it? Lifesteal enchant. Yeah, okay, lifesteal enchant. He's got a 6.666% chance to proc. He's PPM, right? He's got this 666 chance to proc per minute, PPM, right? So every 60 seconds you'll get 6 point something SOR procs. It double procs with SOR, so you end up with 6.66 times 2, blah blah blah, and this is how many times he'll proc in a minute, yada yada yada, right? Moral of the story, he ends up being like 6 HPS. 6 DPS and 6 HPS on like Edward the Odd. He ends up being, and that doesn't really change. He ends up being a little bit more on Flurry Axe, because Flurry Axe is a special boy, but we'll talk about that later. That doesn't really change. Judgment of Light, when it's healing for like 91, which is per proc. So Judgment of Light does weird things. It heals for 91 per proc with the 2-set bonus. It has a 66% chance to proc. So every auto attack that you're throwing into the target basically heals you for like 60. because that's how much it heals, and then every single auto attack you do, no matter what your weapon speed is, whether it's like 1 second or whether it's like 10,000 seconds, it's always a 2/3% chance to proc. And then I think you divide that again by Edward the Odd. So we got to divide this by 1.6 weapon speed. And as you can see, we're getting very close to yada, yada, yada. Moral of the story is, this is the HPS of Judgment of Light on Edward the Odd. This number goes up with Flurry Axe to a degree, but you're missing the 66%, 66 HPS from Edward the Odd. But this is Judgment of Light's HPS. You add the 6 from Lifesteal enchant. The next thing you know, you're getting very close to 44%. And then you add the 66 or whatever from Edward the Odd. And you can see very close that we're getting to 110% or 105%, somewhere around there, HPS. This is a shit ton. A absolutely terrifying metric shit ton of HPS for a Paladin that is running around sword and board. This is ridiculous. And where this gets even worse is the fact that it covers the weakness of SOR. Hello. It covers the not SOR. It covers the weakness of Edward the Odd. Edward the Odd's weakness is, it'll proc twice a minute, but it might not proc, and then you're stuck there with your dick in your hand, and you're really relying on this weapon to proc for you. Whereas, Judgment of Light just comes in there and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to keep you alive until Edward the Odd procs. And once Edward the Odd starts procking, you can start healing, and then you're off to the races. So the consistency of Judgment of Light basically negates a lot of the inconsistency of Edward the Odd effectively. And it's a shit ton of HPS. It's even a shit ton of HPS when you're dealing with Might of Minithil warriors. You guys are probably afraid of MOM warriors, like Might of Minithil. In Era, Might of Minithil warriors, they must do so much damage that we struggle to beat them as paladins. Nah. Not at all. I'm full tier 2, 330 spell power, and I Holy Reckoning without a two-hander, and I eat MOM warriors alive. I can almost 2v1 MOM warriors. It's actually kind of terrifying. Basically, you rage starve the shit out of warriors in Season of Mastery. Not Season of Mastery, in Phase 6. The reason for this is because, yeah, they're doing a lot of damage, but they don't have a sword, and they don't have an axe. And because they don't have a sword and they don't have an axe, they're missing sword specialization and axe specialization. If you don't, basically it's 1% critical strike chance, 5% crit. So they've lost 5% critical strike. Instead, they stun you, and that's a little difficult to use. It's possible because they'll stun you with the mace, and then they'll Mortal Strike on you or Whirlwind in you, and they don't have to worry about block, dodge, or parry, right? So that's how they compensate for the fact that they're missing 5% critical strike chance or 5% chance to proc an extra hit with sword specialization. For the fact that they're using Might of Minithil, right? The dilemma for them is that their rage generation is suffering, because warriors only generate rage off of their white attack damage. So if they're trying to use the stun that way, it would. So they're in this weird dilemma where it's do I hold off on my Whirlwind and my Mortal Strike to try to time it with my white damage so that if it stuns the target, my white hit will do more damage because it'll negate block, dodge, and parry. You can see the dilemma of where they're trying to get more rage out of their white hits using mace specialization, whereas it's extremely straightforward to get more rage out of either axe, 5% critical strike, or sword specialization plus 5% chance to get an extra melee attack, or extra white damage that generates rage. Because of this, despite their DPS increase, they're actually much easier to rage starve. And then when you look at things like what's happening with the shields out of Nax. So for example, Face of Death is running around with like 3,500 armor. Shield of Condemnation is like this is the healing one, 3,400 armor. Whereas before you might be dicking around with like this 3,000 damage shield. Basically, shields went up by quite a bit of HP, somewhere between 4,000 or 400 to 500 HP. If you don't know, I did the math on this recently. You might want to wake up for this one, boys and girls. Here's an important thing to note. I did the math on HP recently and discovered that it actually doesn't have diminishing returns. So if you look at my Holy Reckoning spec here, and we go into protection, you can see I've got 4 out of 5 points in toughness. And you would think that anticipation would be better in era, but the answer is actually no. Yeah, it's no for a variety of reasons. First, it's no because mace specialization is a thing, right? So when they're stunning, when you're getting stunned here and there, this anticipation is not doing anything for you. When a rogue is opening up on you, anticipation is not doing anything for you because you're stunned. When a variety of classes or melee classes are bursting on you, anticipation's just not there for you, whereas the toughness is always there for you. On top of that, anticipation does not consistently rage starve warriors, whereas anticipation or toughness will consistently rage starve warriors. Toughness also synergizes extremely well with like Blessing of Sanctuary and Redoubt, whereas anticipation doesn't really synergize well with Blessing of Sanctuary or Redoubt. Anticipation also does not synergize well with Reckoning. And lastly, when you have points in anticipation, it becomes significantly harder for you to pre-charge out in the open world, especially against lower level mobs. It's just not good. Like stay away from it. Meanwhile, toughness, and I did the math on this. Toughness has my bad, armor. Armor actually has a flat HP increase. Oh my goodness. One sec. I got to do something really fast here. Okay, we are back. Had to go to the bathroom there. I'm drinking all this Coca-Cola. Wanted to make my point and then take a pause, but nope. Anyways, so Coca-Cola is like my coffee. I don't drink coffee, but I drink Coca-Cola. Not very often though. Armor. So I'm sure you guys have heard for a million years that armor has diminishing returns. Armor has diminishing returns. Toughness is terrible. Armor has diminishing returns. Whoever tells you that never actually did the math on it. So the math basically pans out like this. Is it 10% effective HP? I think so. Yeah. So every five. No, let's just start here. Okay. So basically, it goes like this. Say you've got 2,000 armor. I don't want to look at this real fast. There we go. Let's say you have 2,000 armor. Okay. 2,000 armor. When you do the math on that damage reduction, gives you like a 36% damage reduction. You scale up the armor to like 6,000 or to 10,000, so times 5, right? What you'll notice is that it's now like a 282 percent HP increase, which is literally times 5, meaning that armor is increasing your effective HP at a linear rate. It is literally every 550, somewhere around there, somewhere around 550 points of armor is giving you an extra 10% increased life, effective HP. So by effective HP, I mean like when you're at a 50% damage reduction, your effective HP has gone up, I think it's times 2, right? Yeah, you have twice the amount of effective HP. So, for example, if you had 100 HP and a 50% damage reduction, and you were asking yourself, okay, how much damage would this person have to do to me in order to kill me? The answer is 200, because 200 divided by 50% equals 100. Congratulations, they killed you. And then when you're at 2/3 damage reduction, it's like times 3. So now they need 300 damage, 2/3 of 3 is 100, and they killed you. So that's how effective HP works, mathematically speaking. So, anyways, the moral of the story is there's no diminishing returns on armor whatsoever. It is completely linear and therefore good to invest in. This is also important to note because, like I said, with the next gear, one of the things that went up for most classes was their armor. Armor went up. HP for a lot of classes did not go up. HP for Paladin went up. HP for most, we need to stand toe to toe with people, like warriors went up. It went up for hunters. I don't think it really went up for you can look into it, but it didn't really go up for any other class. But everyone's damage went up as well. Oh, right, we're talking about one-handers. Okay. And then I did a brief pause to talk about warriors. Blah 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 blah. You rage starve warriors and sword and board, and they die horribly. They really don't like spell power whatsoever. Highly susceptible to being rage starved. Please, 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 rage starve warriors out the wazoo. Play that stupid game. When you're rage starving warriors, certain weapons become extremely useful. Edward the Odd's not too bad, but it might cause parry haste. Manslayer is really good because the lifesteal for Manslayer doesn't care about Mortal Strike. However, the Supreme Rage Starve build Paladin, it basically puts on a bunch of gear that they go crazy with the armor. They even put on both the rings that have armor. There's the Dark Iron Ring from, one second here. Yeah, the Heavy Dark Iron Ring from Molten Core is still pretty chad. 20 stamina, 110 armor, and a bunch of defense. Super good against rogues, but even better versus warriors. And then there's the Nax Ring, which is like something defender around here. Fallen Defender, yeah, there it is. 140 armor, 240 and chance to hit. Yeah, 240 HP and a chance to hit. Also really good. And then there's like some cloaks that have a lot of armor. So, for example, our Dragon's Blood cape here, as you can see, has a whopping 116 armor, and even compared to the Nax cloaks, he's got armor. So one of the advantages of Dragon's Blood cape is that it actually comes with like a significant amount more armor. That might sound stupid, but it's actually one of these Nax cloaks actually has a shit ton of armor on it. I forget which one. Yeah, here we go. I was gonna say 200, and I was like, nah, it's not 200. My brain's broken. Nope, here he is. 14 stamina, 200 fucking armor, defense, increased chance to dodge, and chance to hit. This thing is just like, oh my goodness. Less stamina though. But yeah, so what happens when you rage starve warriors, especially Might of Minithil warriors, is you can start doing annoying things like when they're not white attacking, you start flash of lighting in their face. And the reason for this is, if you don't know, when you're healing as a paladin, it's like you're stunned. You can't block, dodge, or parry. So you don't want to heal while they're about to white attack you because you're going to give them really good. It's bad rage starvation on their point. But it also costs warriors like 10 rage to I think it's less if they have a certain set bonus, but it costs them like 10 rage on average, especially when they're well geared, to kick your heal. And they're like, okay, that's a shit ton of rage to kick a heal. Maybe I just let the heal go through and rely on Mortal Strike to mitigate against it, but you're still healing, so you really don't care. On top of that, or they can kick you and then they have Mortal Strike up on you issues. Basically, you're putting the position, you're rage starving the warriors so hard that they are in this horrible scenario where they have just enough rage to keep Mortal Strike up on you at all times, but they can't do anything else. They can't kick your heals. They can't put sunders on you. They can't even whirlwind on you because all that just costs too much damn rage. Or what they can do is they can kick your heels, but they'll let Mortal Strike fall off periodically. And that gets really, really, really bad with like Edward the Odd and all of this HPS stuff that we're talking about doing with them versus one-handers, right? Because the next thing you know, you go from like what was it? With Mortal Strike up, your HPS with the Edward the Odd style is like 55, and then when it falls off, it spikes to 110. And this is just all healing they can't afford. They absolutely cannot afford. So, anyways, warriors hate being rage starved in Nax gear, and you can rage starve the crap out of them. I've been beating them very, very consistently and relatively easily, even with just tier 2. Um, Sometimes they force me to bubble, which is new. Like before Nax, I didn't even have to bubble on warriors the vast majority of the time. Now that they're in Nax, I have to bubble on them. But the scenario is that I bubble on the warrior, and the warrior's like 30% life. And under those conditions, I don't even stop to heal myself. I just keep chasing the warrior until he dies, because I can kill him, right? You drop him below 20% health, you start Hammer of Wrathing them. They may or may not have to start healing potion all over the place. You see the heal potion come out, you're like, okay, fine, whatever, let me just get in this, like, 3,500 crit heal and heal myself to full, and the warriors just, they don't have time to break contact and gear swap or do this or that. It's just bad. It's really bad. They die horribly. But yeah, rage starve them, the end of the story. Okay, so what the hell was the original point about all this? Oh, right. We were talking about one-handed weapon playstyle, time on target, because the one-handed weapon style, time on target from Holy Reckoning and Deep Holy overlap. So I'm simultaneously talking about the life of a Deep Holy Paladin and the life of a time on target Holy Reckoning Paladin. Back and forth, right? I'm basically pointing out that, hey, Hungering Cold and all the weapons in Nax don't really benefit us at all. But there are some really cool things we can do with the 2-set bonus from Redemption. Yeah, there we go. And Edward the Odd is still a pimp. There's also a bunch of like armor that you pick up in Nax, which you can really use to rage starve the crap out of people, and rogues don't stand a snowball's chance in hell. But you have, as a Holy Shock Paladin, you didn't have these problems to begin with, because you're a damn Holy Shock Paladin, you're like rogues, giggity. And then you're like warriors, giggity. And you just kind of beat them to death. As Holy Reckoning, you don't have Holy Shock, but you do have Reckoning. Which changes things slightly, and oh damn it, Edward the Odd becomes better because you have Reckoning, but that's also not true because Holy Shock is letting you survive longer, which is making Edward the Odd eventually is going to proc, and yeah, you get the point. So RNG, it counters the RNGesus of it. Hakari Manslayer is definitely better with the Reckoning. You have Blessing of Sanctuary, which is really, 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 really stupid good against like rogues, and it's also stupidly good for rage starving warriors. So everything tends to even out. The scenarios are basically about the same. Let's talk two-hander. So yeah, so Deep Holy's life is basically like, yeah, I can't really beat frost mages. I can beat up fire mages if I'm wearing the right gear, and we're about to talk about the right gear. And nothing really changes for them in general. They're still really fucking solid. The only thing that changed for them is that the retribution, the command eye for an eye paladin became a thing. It was a bit of a thing before, but it really becomes a thing in Nax for all the reasons that we talked about. Everyone's critical strike chance went up. Everyone's damage went up. Their HP pools didn't go up. The spellcaster HP pools didn't go up. And on top of that, mages are squishier now because they're running around as fucking fire mages, and it's just like, whoo. So suddenly, Holy Reckoning can like can easily one shot fire mages, especially when they're wearing the right gear. And the Holy Command Paladin is actually a thing in Era. All right, moving on. Let's talk about the right gear, the right stuff. Rag. Okay. So this is my dream weapon that I still don't have because the RNG gods hate me. So this build right here, I've talked about Jakova about this build. I made some videos about this build before. Is an absolute monster of a Holy Reckoning Paladin. Like a holy fuck balls monstrosity of a Holy Reckoning Paladin. And the life cycle of this Paladin is very fascinating. Okay, so I'll give you a quick rundown on the stats before I start talking about it. So this is the big deal here, is that you have 130 fire resist. So with Aura, you have like 190 fire resist. And this is 190 fire resist without using any trinkets. This is 190 fire resist without specializing against, fire resist. So you don't have like a fireproof cape or anything like that. Fireproof cape also being from Molten Core, by the way. Really easy to get. Damn it. My finger's in the wrong spot. So fireproof cape. You lose like, I think it's like you lose like 100 HP. But you gain some healing stats. You lose a little bit of armor, but mostly you go up like a 13 fire resist or some crap like that. So basically, this build is using fire resist enchants rather than the extra HP enchants. It's barely reaching the HP breakpoints. Basically, by using Fortitude of the Scourge, its spell power is stupidly low, but it's not the worst thing in the world. So spell power is around about 200. This looks bad, but you got to remember the spell power is when you go sword and board, right? And it's very easy for you to be sword and board and then have like plus 30 spell power from the enchant. This thing is just using plus 25 agility enchant, blah, 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 blah. But okay, so let's talk about the amazing things about this Paladin build. So the amazing things about this Paladin build is it's using rank 3 gear, because this helm is rank 13, my bad. But the gloves are rank 12. You don't have to use rank 13. You can actually use rank 12, but you lose 1% crit is the only stat change that happens between 12 and 13. Judgment leg plates, and then you're using 5-piece tier 2, but you're using all the bits that have fire resist. Typically, except for the bindings here. The bindings just have like shit tons of stamina, and it's really hard to replace that. Onyxia Tooth Pendant, because, hit, crit. Basically, this build synergizes around fire resist and then critical strike chance. Like those are the two real big things that this build is synergizing around. Hand of Rag also comes with 30 fire resist, and that's how you get up to like this 190 fire resist without breaking a sweat. So, if you don't know, resistances are basically, and we tested this with Jakova, every 4.5 resist is worth a 1% damage reduction. So if I multiply this by 10, that means every 45 resist that we have is worth a 10% damage reduction. So if I go over here and I go 190, because that's our fire resist, and then I divide that by 4.5, this should give us our percentage damage reduction versus fire, which, as you can see, is like 42.22222%. Yeah. 50% fire damage reduction, I do believe, is 220. 220 divided by 4.5 equals. Really? Oh, it's 240. 240 divided by 4.5 equals. No, that's too much. Weird. Oh yeah, 225. That's right. 225 divided by 4.5 equals. There we go. Yeah. So me and Jacoba tested this a bunch because I have a level 60 mage, and we just discovered. I've never talked about this in video because I didn't know this. The different schools of magic have some weird properties when it comes to resistances. So, for example, frost resistance is never partial in Classic World of Warcraft. It's either doing 100% damage or it is fully resisting and it's not doing anything in between. So if you have this 225 frost resistance and you have a 50% damage reduction, that means every frost spell coming your way is either going to do full damage or it's going to be resisted, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So if 4 spells are coming your way, 2 of them are going to do 4 damage, and 2 of them are going to be fully resisted, mathematically speaking, right? Fire is a different animal. Fire is never 100% resisted. Fire can be 0% resist, or that 25%, 50%, or 75%. It's never 100% resisted. What this basically means is that resistances versus frost mages, you have to get them really high before you can start effectively relying on them. Especially considering that the enemy has, possibly has Magic Pen, right? They got to get the frost resist up really high because of just the mechanics. They're trying to kill you with a handful of spells. We talked about this: 2 frost bolts and 2 fire blasts. So so basically the way the frost mechanics work make it much easier for them to basically. You're wearing resistances, but their burst basically gives the middle finger to your resistances, and they kill you anyways. Which is why you have to go really high on the resistances versus frost. The complete opposite math is true with fire resist. Since fire resist cannot be 100% resisted, but it makes it far more probable that it suffers from partial resistances. So the partial resistances, the odds of a fire mage burst hitting you at 50% fire damage reduction and somehow sneaking through all of your resistances and killing you, right? Like all your resistances basically doing nothing, are stupidly low, like frighteningly stupidly low, and they're frighteningly stupidly low for 2 reasons. The first reason is all of the spells they're throwing at you do fire damage. They're not using frost bolts. They're throwing fire damage at your ass. The only other spell you'll see them use other than fire damage will be arcane missiles, and if you have thick obsidian breastplate, which this build does have, thick obsidian breastplate kind of shits on arcane missiles because each of the missile attacks has a chance to proc it, and it's really bad. So it'll in Nax gear, the arcane missiles will do a shit ton of damage. They do like 400 damage per missile, 440 damage per missile, but each of them has a chance to proc the obsidian breastplate, so it's not even close. So yeah, when a fire mage is trying to kill you, they're hitting you with like 4 fire spells, and all of those have a chance to resist, and it's an extremely high probability that you'll get partial resistances on all those things. It's also extremely high probability that thick obsidian breastplate will proc all over the place. Meanwhile, while a frost mage is trying to kill you, they have a mix of damage. They're hitting you with 2 frost attacks that are the really scary damage sources, and then they're hitting you for like 2 fire blasts. So if you're heavy on the frost resist, you've only got 2 rolls to try to mitigate, and then you don't really have any fire resist, so those are always going to do damage. So the moral of the story is fire resistance shits on fire mage. Let me say that again. Fire resist shits on fire mage. Fire resist also shits on nade, grenade stuns, and grenade damage. Why is this? Well, grenade stuns are weird. Grenade stuns say in their tooltip that they are a disorient, but then they share a DR. They seem to stun the target as opposed to disorient them, and they share a DR with stuns. However, for the purposes of resistances, grenades are classified as a disorientation effect. On top of that, they have to run a double resist check. So they do. I'll give you an example. So say you're a human, you're a Holy Reckoning Paladin, or you're a Deep Holy Paladin, or you're a Holy Command Paladin, and you have Unyielding Faith. All right? You have a 5. Let's pull up the calculator here. You have a 5% chance to resist the target, to just resist the nade stun period, right? On top of that, you have an extra 10% chance to resist the nade stun because you have Unyielding Faith. It's actually a disorienting effect, so Unyielding Faith affects it. On top of that, there's a chance that you just fully resist the fire damage. If you fully resist the nade fire damage, you will also it doesn't because you fully resisted the damage, that there is no chance to stun you. And at 40% fire damage or distance or somewhere around there, the odds that you're going to resist or fully resist said nade, we'll say, is about 20%, which is probably very realistic. All right, so now we got 20%. So from those two alone, we have a 35% chance that our grenade is just not going to stun us. But then it gets even dumber because the nade stun itself is a fire school of magic and is also subject to resistances, which means at 40% fire resist, it's going to be resisted 40% of the time. You see where we're going with this. So now we actually have to add like another 40% onto this whole RNG thing. By the time you're done with this, there's something stupid like a 70% chance that grenades do not stun you anymore, and wearing this particular suit that we're talking about over here. It's like a 40% chance, 70% chance nades just don't work. I cannot remember the last time. Grenade stuns are exceedingly rare in this Paladin build. Like, when it happens, I am more surprised than anything. The more common thing to see is that I'll be in Warsong Gulch healing, and the next thing I know, like three grenades will land on me, like bam, bam, bam around me, and my heal still goes through because I'm sitting in an ocean of fire resist, and I give no shits. This is actually key to this build. The reason why this is key to this build is because it gives you like a half-assed repent, in the sense that you're a time on target Paladin build. That's what a Holy Reckoning Paladin build is. Also, this gear is also extremely good for eye for an eye command Paladin that we talked about. It's also not half bad for a Holy Shock Paladin, but it's really good for that Holy Shock command Paladin, right? This gear is just good in general, to be perfectly honest. But how it basically works is it's like, okay, I get on top of my target. I use grenade to get on top of my target. And he's like, all right, fine, I'm just going to grenade you and then get distance from you. And then the grenade completely whiffs. And because it whiffed, it's like you had repent. So it's like having repent, basically, which is really awesome. On top of that, this build completely shits on fire mages, like really, really bad. This is not the gear you'd want to have versus a fire mage because you'd have more specific trinkets, right? And I'm not talking like dueling scenarios. I'm talking like I'm just running around out in world PvP and I get jumped by a fire mage. It's like, oh shit. These aren't really the trinkets you'd want to have, but it's not too hard to get into the trinkets that you want to have because you have. It's very easy to trinket swap on a mage. In most PvP scenarios, because heartbeat duration and a variety of other circumstances, you're going to find the ability to get into your trinkets. It's not that big of a deal. The best the fire mage can do is Eye of Mob on you. Eye of Mob is a thing. Please tell me you guys know what the hell that is. Mob. Eye of Moom. Mome? I call it Mob. Increase damage to all schools of magic by 50 and decrease magical resistances to your spell target by 100 for 30 seconds. The best that most enemy spell, like Fire Mage, can do against this build is use the Eye of Moam on you. But it's like, okay, it still has a 3-minute cooldown. This is in lieu of other burst trinkets that you're using. And all you've basically done is reduced my resistances to... If you remember that mage build only has... the maximum spell penetration that you can run into in the game is 65. I mean, they're reducing your resistances by 65. And that is specifically mage, and specifically because they're wielding a staff that they're wielding that ring that has no stamina. They're wielding the Don Julio's ring, which also is stupidly low stamina, and then they have that staff, which is it has decent stamina on it, so that they're squishier for having the spell pen, significantly so. But the most you can get is like 65 spell pen. So they're reducing your, if they have all the 65 spell pen and they're using the Eye of Moab, yeah, you could argue that they're cutting your resistances down into nothing. But your resistances are still there. And here's where it gets scary. All right, so let's say I'm running around. Right, so let's say they catch you and you don't have specific trinkets for them, right? And they like Eye of Moab on you or some crap like that. Um, you can actually just sacrifice bubble for it. Be like, okay, fine, whatever. They sheep me. They Eye of Moab. They start charging up a really big spell. I notice that they've activated Moab or whatever. I can just bubble and trinket swap. I can PvP trinket if one of these are PvP trinkets and trinket swap. It's not that big of a deal. And the trinkets that you get into would be like, fire reflector and all that stupid stuff. Fire reflector, ultra flash, fire reflector, and then Lothebs is not the worst thing in the world. And if it really was, you might want to go with fireproof cape. So you've sacrificed bubble basically at this point to swap into some very serious fire resistance gear. Oh look, our fire resist shot up significantly. We can't actually use the cooldown on Lotheb's reflector, unfortunately, because we just trinket swapped. But let's just math this out real fast here. Plus 60. So this is our fire resist, and then we minus that by 165. Bada bing, bada boom. We divide that by this to get our percentage, and we're still running around with like 15% fire damage reduction. On top of this, we're 15% fire damage reduction with 5,000 HP still. This is so bad. And all we have to do is survive this stupidity, and we're in an extreme, and we become unkillable. Effectively, right? Like we're not going to die because 30 seconds from now, Lotheb's reflector is a thing, and then fire reflector becomes a thing, and our enemy is basically just up shit creek without a paddle. So it's like worst case scenario. It's like, oh crap, I'm getting jumped by a fire mage. Okay, let me just use bubble to swap into the proper gear, waste some of their time. Hit them with a. Hit them with the 6-second stun. They blink away 20 yards. I run away in the opposite direction, also wasting more time. All kinds of things you can do. Worst case scenario, I'm using Whipper-Root Tuber. Maybe I'm using Healing Potion. Like, that's like worst case scenario. I don't even know how we got into this scenario. But fine, whatever. I had to use burn every defensive cooldown I have in order to survive the Moam. Now what? Now I'm still unkillable. I've still got thick obsidian breastplate here, and my fire resist is go f yourself, 9,000. So for example, plus 60 equals minus 65 equals divided by 4.5 equals. This is without Moab activation. I'm still at like even with all their spell pen crap going on, I'm still at damn near a 40% damage reduction. They and thick obsidian breastplate. They can't kill you. You are unkillable. Okay? And then all this even gets even worse. Let's go back to Dragon's Blood Cape here. Dragon's Blood Cape. Boop. Yeah. All of this is still really bad for the Fire Mage because the average wreck bomb of this Paladin, keep in mind we were prioritizing fire resistance. We wanted to make sure we had the HP requirements, and this HP is actually a really, really good. You can see we're not quite to the HP breakpoint yet, theoretically, right? The HP breakpoint is 5,150 to 5,200, But the fact that we were sitting on like 190 fire resist, and I just talked about how grenades don't really do anything to us anymore, and we have thick obsidian breastplate, this is more than enough HP to get the job done. Like, you're perfectly fine against spellcasters. Don't even worry about it. It'll be like once in a blue moon you're not fine versus spellcasters, and then like major healing potion is going to against burst classes. Major healing potion will come through and save your life. It's not even a problem. Don't even worry about it. This build, because of the high resistances and thick obsidian breastplate, easily hits the breakpoint. Is what I'm trying to say. And then against warriors, you go sword and board. The stats look a little different, but you can rage starve them out pretty easily. Edward the Odd becomes a thing. These are not the right trinkets for fighting them, but you know, blah 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 blah. Yeah, you still resist the grenades out the ass. Super useful. So you'll be going for a holy light. The warrior will be like, I'm just going to nade your holy light. What are you thinking? They try to nade you. It doesn't actually stun you. They like, oh shit, and then the holy light heals you for like 2,000 or some crap like that. And then they're up shit creek without a paddle. Good stuff. Right. So the other reason you prioritize, so the other stat that's being prioritized besides fire resist, getting the HP breakpoint, is melee crit. And the reason for this is because as a Holy Reckoning Paladin, what I discovered, like a full Tier 2 Holy Reckoning Paladin, what I discovered fighting mages was that I had no problem fighting against the mage. And I could get in about 4 wreck bombs over the course of like a 5 minutes, more like 6 minutes, 6-minute duel with most mages. But full Tier 2 has like 5% melee crit, which means that there was like mathematically only like 1 in 10 of my wreck bombs, even with Hand of Rag, could threaten to kill a mage. Meaning only 1 in 10 of the times that I would touch a mage, they would die. Right? I would have 4 rolls of the dice, but I only have a 10% chance to delete them out of existence. So I decided to look into increasing critical strike chance to rectify that situation, thinking to myself, well, hey, if I'm super survivable, let's turn that into a chance to actually beat them. Let's try to go for like a 1 in 4 wreck bomb will kill them, since I know I can get 4 wreck bombs into them before I die. This build here, not factoring in Radiant Fire Reflector, blah, 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 has an average wreck bomb damage of about 4,400. So, and that's versus mages, okay? And that's why I geared up a mage and to look at their armor and everything and yada, yada, yada. So versus a mage, when you touch them, it does an average of 4,000, somewhere between 4,200 and 4,400 damage. And if you recall correctly, our fire mages don't actually have HP. So this isn't quite the spell pen. We can actually try to find the damn spell pen. I forget the name of the spell pen staff, to be perfectly honest with you. We're just scrolling down and we're looking for something to say 25. For a chance to hit, no, 25, 25, 25, 25, 25. I do believe it's max level gear. It's like shifting firmer. What the hell? Whatever. All I know is that the spell pen staff does not actually have a significant HP difference from what you call it. No, we don't want that piece of shit. Fang, that sounds like Harbinger of Doom. No. Brimstone Staff. No. Death Sting. No. What the? Why can you wear Hungry? Oh God, kill me. All right, it doesn't actually have more HP than Atiesh. So, anyways, these fire mages are running. So the reason why the frost mages survive a Holy Reckoning Wreck Bomb is because they're running around with like 4,100 HP, and they have an 800 point mana shield. And your average Wreck Bomb does like 4,400 damage to them, which means they're easily surviving your Wreck Bomb with like what is that? They're easily surviving your wreck bomb with like 500 HP remaining or some crap like that. Because their effective HP is like 4,900. Yeah, so they have like 5,000 HP left. That's not even within Hammer of Wrath range, which is really important. And so that's why you'll run up and you'll bomb a Frost Mage, and they may or may not be in Hammer of Wrath range, and then they heal pot or whatever to full, and the next thing you know, you just can't kill them. The Fire Mages are a completely different story because they're missing the 800 point shield, and they also tend to just run around with less HP in general. And so what this tends to mean is if you touch them with this build, they tend to die. Now, there are some things they can do about this. They actually have a spell called Fire Ward. They have Frost Ward and Fire Ward. Fire Ward. Come on. Come on. There you go. Alright. Alright, so this is Mage. Costs them 320 mana. It lasts 30 seconds. Absorbs 920 fire damage, lasts 30 seconds, right? Mages almost never use this. They really should. A fire mage can survive a wreck bomb from this Hand of Rag mage pretty easily if they can find their damn fire ward right before they get a wreck bombed. A lot of them don't, though. It's really hard for them to find the time and the space to get fire ward in. They also don't bar it or know that it exists all that much. But they can do it. You'll see the better fire mages use it against fire reflectors. So you'll like fire reflector on them, and the ball will be coming back into their face, and right before it hits them, they find their fire ward, and it's really good. So they can survive it with fire ward, but the problem is they're still so low HP that there's a really good chance that they drop to within Hammer of Wrath range. And if you drop to within Hammer of Wrath range against a Holy Reckoning Paladin, all kinds of kill potentials become available. So it's like, do you still have your bubble? Okay, well, this mage is fucking dead. Oh, the other problem with fire mages is that there's like 3 builds. One of them takes combustion, and 2 out of the 3 builds don't have ice block. All right, so one of them, so you can see ice block is down here at like 21. Come on, tell me how many. 1, 2, 3, 4, 21. Okay, it's not telling me. What the fuck? Oh, there it is. Requires 20 points of frostness. Okay, so it's 21. It's the 21 point talent. So it's effectively like our Blessing of Sanctuary or our free critical heal, right? And what this means is if they take their 31 talent point, they don't have ice block. Big fucking problem. If they decided to go Palm Pyro, and how you can tell a Palm Pyro easily is if they counterspell you and it silences you for no fucking reason. That's always a Palm Pyro because that means they came way deep in to get improved counterspell. But their 21 talent point is Presence of Mind. That's where they get the free instant cast Fireball, right? Palm Pyro is very popular. Palm Pyro Fire Mage does not have Ice Block, does not have Combustion. The Combustion Fire Mage, Combustion's not very good, by the way. Feel free to read it. Don't have Ice Block. So only 1 out of 3 Fire Mages actually have Ice Block, and the Ice Block spec is the PvP spec. It's not the rating spec. So the vast majority of fire mages actually use Palm Pyro, which sounds scary until you have like fire resist. And at that point, it's not scary anymore. And you're dealing with a mage that if they can't find their fire ward, dies. If they do find their fire ward, there's a 50-50 chance that they're within Hammer of Wrath range, which is really, really bad. There's also an extremely good chance they don't even have Ice Block, which is extremely bad, because when they don't have Ice Block, you can start doing terrible, terrible things to them. What kind of terrible things can you do to them? Well, you can run up to them, watch them blink the F away, because again, you have all this fire resist, they can't kill you, so it's not like you had to stun them to catch them or anything. You run up to them, you take all the fire crap to your face. You're like, yeah, whatever, that's cute. You threaten to wreck bomb them. They blink away, and then you like nade them or goblin mortar them or some crap. You run up to them and you put your wreck bomb into them. They take, 4,500 damage. This is also the reason why it's really hard for them to find a place to fire ward, because before they blinked, they would have had to have fire ward up, or somewhere in them trying to blast you with all these spells while you're running at them, they had to find the space to put fire ward up as opposed to, blast you with a spell. So really what that looks like is they're running away a little bit, they put fire ward up, they run away a little bit more, and then they like try to hit you with a spell and then like blink away, Ugh. Okay, so let's say our mage friend is still alive. But keep in mind, this is your average wreck bomb. So if you high roll, homie still kind of dies. So what is that? That's 3940 plus 920 equals. So this is their effective HP. And we touch them for 4,400 damage. So they've got 460 damage left. And you can see, what was their original HP? Their HP is this. Yeah, so 10% of their HP is 10% life, right? Is that true? Yeah. So you can see they're within Hammer of Wrath range, no problem. If you know your stuns... Alright, so here's the scenario. You ran at the fire mage. You threatened to wreck bomb them, so they blinked away. If they didn't find their fire ward, congratulations, they're dead. If they did find their fire ward, congratulations, they're within Hammer of Wrath range. They get to take one action before you wrath them and they die. So what actions will save their life? Okay, well, Counterspell will save their life, right? Clearly. But they still have to get the fuck away from you before your melee swing comes down and ends their existence, right? Because your melee swing is definitely going to do enough damage to kill them. They could heal pot or whipper root or some shit like that and get out of Hammer of Wrath range, and then they'll survive because you can't wrath them anymore. But they still have to try to get away from you because your melee swing is still coming down. So what that would look like would be like a healing potion, and they immediately go for a sheep, right? Which is 1.5 second cast. So they can counterspell you, and then they have to wait 1.5 seconds and then go for the sheep. Blah, 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 blah. So you can think about it yourself. But here's the question. What if, when I wreck bomb them, what stops me from... Because they don't have ice block. What stops me from judgment stunning them? Not judgment stunning them. Hammer of justicing them for 3 seconds. Well, if I Hammer of Justice them for 3 seconds, then my melee attack, my Wrath is just going to straight kill them. Right? They died from Wrath. GG's. Don't have ice block. Okay, let's say I don't have Hammer of Wrath or not Hammer, damn it. I don't have Judgment. Damn it. What if I don't have my 6 second stun, for the sake of argument? Well, do I still have Nade? This is a Goblin Mortar that we just bitch slapped them with, right? Yeah, I got Nade, so you grenade them. Keep in mind that I do believe the 440 average bomb damage includes a Thorium Grenade or a Goblin Sapper Charge in there. So you don't gain any damage effectively in the bomb from nading them. But you do gain an extra 1.5 seconds of stun on them, which they're in Hammer of Wrath range. 1.5 seconds of extra stun, no ice block, they're dead, right? So all roads basically lead to a mage died this day, whether they found their fire ward or not. So either you touch them in the bad way and they exploded, they failed to find their fire ward, you touch them, they died. They found their fire ward, you touch them, they live. But it's a very temporary, I survive, and then they die. There's other annoying things you can do, such as seal twisting Justice. So Seal Twisting of Justice is both good and bad because it puts you on a 1.5 second GCD, but you gain an extra like 2 seconds of stun on the target some of the time. Sometimes it's like 2 out of 3 times you get an extra 2 seconds of stun. 1 out of 3 times you get either no stun or you get like 1 second of extra stun on them. Uh, and you can't Hammer of Wrath because you're in a GCD, but the extra second or so of stun ends up lining up stupidly well with like other sources of stun, such as Thorium Grenade for an extra 1.5 seconds. So if it's like 2 seconds plus 1.5 seconds, the next thing you know, your auto attack is coming down again. They died if they didn't die from Hammer of Wrath. If you had Hand of Justice, there are the 6 second stun, the 3 second stun, they're definitely dead. Blah 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 blah. Everything leads to them being dead without ice block. That's the moral of the story is mage needs ice block or mage dies. If they did manage to ice block, then if they had ice block, you're like, okay, that's interesting. They have to sit the entirety of the ice block because of the nature of blink cooldown. So Blink's ice block lasts for 10 seconds. Their blink cooldown is like 12.5 or even 15 seconds. So they have to sit in ice block for at least 9 seconds before they can come out of it and blink away. Why is this important? Well, because it takes you 6 seconds to leave combat and it lets you swap over your trinkets, and you can swap into some trinkets that basically will absolutely murder them. So basically, it's like the sheer act. If they have ice blocks, you're survivable enough that you're just wearing down their ice blocks, and once they don't have ice blocks, they die. The vast majority of fire mages do not have ice blocks at all. They are Palm Pyro, and as Palm Pyro, they do not have ice block, and subsequently they just die. Die, 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 die. GG's. Good game. So this build, let's go back to it real fast here. Absolutely amazing. I haven't tested it yet because, again, I don't actually have Hand of Rag, but I have every other piece. I literally have every other piece except Hand for Rag. So the other amazing things about this build are this. Let's think about the life cycle of this Paladin in like a Season of Mastery scenario or even in Era, right? This build is at its weakest in AQ. And the reason why it's at its weakest in AQ is because fire mages aren't a thing in AQ. Fire mages become a thing in Nax. And this build, since it centers around a heavy amount of fire resist, like 130 fire resist without trinkets, 190 fire resist without trinkets, its weakness is frost mages, especially if frost mages can find their fire ward, versus frost mages that can't find their fire ward. If they don't have ice block, they die. Just like the fire mage, if they don't have ice block, they die. If you recall, the fire mage is only surviving with this much HP because it's using fire ward at like 192 shield. The frost shield is 800 HP, so this thing is even scary and quite deadly versus frost mages that can't find their fire ward. It's actually very difficult to keep up fire ward and their bubble shield at the same time because they're both on like 30-second cooldowns. That's not true. The frost shield's like 30 seconds, but you can use it every 60 seconds, but you can use it every 30 seconds. Yeah. And of course, there's always potential of outplaying the frost mage. So if you like fire, if you frost reflector or fire reflector, the fire mage, you're gonna get bubble out of him. Or it's an ice block or die scenario. You touch them or die scenario, and that's just your average wreck bomb. If your wreck bomb rolls high, there's a chance they just get deleted out of existence. That's where we get like that 1 in 4 wreck bombs will just completely delete the frost mage. So the frost mage might be under the impression that they can actually survive the wreck bomb. Some of the wreck bombs just kind of go Super Saiyan and delete them anyways. Really, really good build. Anyways, let's talk about the life cycle. So, this is like a phase 2 build, right? This is like tier 3 isn't even available yet, but if you got rank 13 gear and you're in phase 2 with Hand of Rag, you're going to be a Chad. Like, period, end of story. You're going to be a monstrosity. By the time Blackwing Lair comes out, you're swapping all these pieces around for Judgment. So, I won't show you the okay. So this is tier 3. We're not in AQ, right? So the Judgment piece actually has fire resist on it, and it's got more stamina. So this is your build effectively in tier 3 minus the trinkets. Let's try to find none. Yeah, we'll just remove the trinkets here real fast. Okay, cool. Right, so this is your build effectively in. There's some bits you don't have. You don't have Scourge of Might of Scourge, the Fortitude. I suppose this changes somewhat. I'm not really sure what it changes to. Attack power, spell power, healing, arcane, all resistances, fire resist. Yeah, there's no real good options. So actually, you would have less HP. You would have barely over 5,000 HP. But phase 3, 5,000 HP, very good. Like that's easily a break point, no problem, especially with all these stats. Your fire resist is now 200. So GG's. All this gear is relatively easy to get. This is phase 1. This is phase 1. Your weapon is phase 1. This is phase 2. 2 of your bits are phase 2. This is phase 1. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4. Four phase 3 pieces in this build, and that's it. Scary, 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 terrifying stuff. All right, so AQ comes out. What changes? AQ pops out. You're going thick obsidian. Boom. So your HP, and of course you still don't have this HP here. So your HP is now below 5,000. This is where you're at your weakest, right? This is the weakest because frost fire mages aren't really a thing yet. Eye of Mo comes into play, and your HP is it's you're still good at like 5,000 or some or so. I can change this to none, right? You're still good with this amount of HP, no problem. But life is just you're still a monstrosity. You're still an absolute fucking monster. You can easily make some changes here and there with like the Don Julios and stuff, or your PvP trinkets and yada yada yada. But this is where you're at your weakest in AQ. Then Nax comes out and everyone's damage goes up significantly, but you gain some more HP. You easily make the break points, and the number one thing that was murdering the crap out of you before, your number one threat, which was frost mages, suddenly they turn into fire mages. And because they're fire mages, you start giving literally no shits. And life gets very interesting from there. So yeah, so I love this build. Very interesting, very good life cycle. Very easy to get the pieces in the grand scheme of things. If you're missing bits of tier 2 here and there, let's say it's AQ, you still don't have the right bits of tier 2. You know, you're not happy about it. But it becomes very easy to fill it out with Avengers, and you still have like the rank 13 gear that are making up for the pieces. So, for example, you might have Crusader belt here, Girdle of the Fallen Crusader, which is still a Chad piece. Yeah, it's just good. Got all the stats. And then you could go like Avengers. Yeah, they don't have Avengers bits, but you get the idea. So yeah, I'm really happy about this. I talked to Jakova a lot about this. It took Jakova a little while to warm up to this build, but once he started hearing about the stats and the fire resist, he was like, all right, that actually sounds nasty. Yeah, so good stuff here. It's the critical strike chance that's really doing it. So what the critical strike chance is basically doing for you is it's giving you enough variance on your bomb to where even frost mages have to blink away from you, and this is a big deal. So let's say my bomb does a lot of damage, but it's weak. Like let's say my bomb does 4,400 damage every single time. Like it's extremely consistent. Well, a frost mage can take that bomb to the face, sheep me, and heal up. Right? It's not even a problem for them. They're like, yeah, I'm just gonna take your bomb to the face. I'm gonna go for the sheep. Oh, you hodge stunned me? Okay, well I'm just gonna blink away and sheep you anyways. Okay, I blinked away and I'm going for the sheep. Oh, you grenaded me or goblin mortared me. Yeah, I don't care because I'm not taking any more damage, right? Because like I said, the sapper charge and stuff are factored in to the bomb. Um, I'm literally just going to like ice block or sheep you or eat this crap while you're running at me because it's only a 1.5 second stun, and I'm gonna run away and then run away till blink comes back up, blink away again, and yada yada yada. Um, they can easily survive it, and they know they can survive it. Whereas if 1 in 4 of these wreck bombs is just going to roll high and delete them out of existence, and literally how that wreck bomb looks is you're running at them, they stand there like a dumbass, you hit them, the next thing you know they're like 10% life, or they're like 12% life. That's actually more like 15. They're like 15. You like blam, and they're like 15% life. You just immediately click the sapper charge. You don't even think about it because sapper charge is going to do like 15% of their life and damage, and the maze just explodes. Right? No real chance to survive that. That threat is what is forcing them to blink away without you having to stun them first, which sets up the entirety of the nastiness of the combination. It gets even better when you do the whole twisting SOR into them. So if they're dumb enough to stand there and take it, thinking like, okay, well, if it does enough damage to me, I'll just blink away immediately, or I'll ice block immediately, or I will healing pot immediately. When you're twisting the stun into it, you're getting the stun off into them, and the next thing they know, they're in a scenario where it's like ice block or die. And they're in competition with realizing the ice block or die scenario that they're in, because you've stunned them. Well, technically they can blink away. Of recognizing the direness of the situation they're in before you use the sapper charge, kind of a thing. Or you can just watch them blink away, and then you like goblin mortar them and hammer of wrath them, and they're just gone. Do not pass. I guess they're in a blink an ice block or die scenario again. Like the hammer of wrath is in the air coming at them. They're stunned. They have to ice block or they're dead. But even when they come out of the ice block, they're still, within Hammer of Wrath range, which is really, really bad. So if you have Bubble, they're dead, or they have to ice block some more. They need to have Counterspell, or dead, or they have to ice block some more. It's just really bad. You're putting them in a really bad scenario because your Wreck Bomb is threatening to delete them. And that is what the crit is doing to them, effectively. Okay. Otherwise, they just take it on the chin, they sheep you, and they giggle, and they heal up, right? And it's really hard to force ice block that of them. Huh. What else is there to talk about? Right, I love this build. It's absolutely amazing. You don't even have to step foot into Nax. If you notice, there's not even a piece of AQ gear here, so you don't even have to step into AQ. Really, really good. Really, really, really good to build. This is also an extremely good build for other certain specs. So, for example, Reckoning. If you have this build versus Fire Mage, you're not lamenting the situation at all. Not at all. So this spec is borderline deleting Fire Mages out of existence, even without command twisting, and even without eye for an eye. So you can make some changes here and there to the stats and yada yada yada, and you still have. It's not even a question of I have a 25% chance to delete this Frost Mage out of existence when I make contact with him. As Ret Reckoning, you're just going to delete them out of existence. It's not even questionable. Deep Ret also does not mind this gear at all, especially Control Deep Ret. They might change out the Thick Obsidian Breastplate to something else, but because they're still doing the command seal twisting thing, they've got Hand of Rag. Hand of Rag is really good with them. The fire resist is not going lamented whatsoever, especially since we talked about how it works with grenades. Deep Ret, Control Ret usually doesn't have Unyielding Faith, but the fire resistance is still so high that like 2/3 of grenades that are coming their way are just being completely whiffed. Since they're Control Ret, they can start doing some other nasty things like having Hand of Justice here instead, and yada yada yada. It's just a solid build all around. The The command eye for an eye, holy shock paladin build also does not lament having this gear because they can very quickly, very easily, they can just seal twist all over the place. We talked about what eye for an eye does. Eye for an eye is basically like running around with a fire reflector, shadow reflector, frost reflector at all times. If you do the math on this build, yeah, you're gonna mages still have a chance to be absolutely deleted. They're under threat from that, so it's the exact same scenario that they're basically under as a reckoning paladin. Um, yeah, it's actually just a really good build, to be perfectly honest with you. This is a monster paladin build. What does it look like when you go up against elemental shamans? Well, that depends entirely upon what kind of spec you are. If you're reckoning and you're trying to take this spec against elemental shamans, there's a really good chance you're going to have a bad time. But that's easily fixed by some trinkets. Unfortunately, that means you need to get Burrower Shell. You just have to go get Burrower Shell. So you'll have to step into AQ. The other trinket that's really good, if you don't have Burrower Shell, Jom Gobbers isn't half bad. I've thought about this. Jom Gobbers is actually an extremely good trinket, like an amazing trinket on Control Ret Paladins for a variety of reasons, just because it lines up so well with what Control Ret can do. It's actually kind of terrifying. Like you just start your if you just pop this trinket and then start running to do all your Control Ret shit, it's actually pretty terrifying. But I do believe its Scarab Brooch is interesting. I've thought about this a lot. Yeah, this Scarab Brooch is not bad at all. To be perfectly honest, it's a pretty decent substitute for the fuck the 900 HP trinket that I'm currently wearing. Anyways, Petrifying Scarab's the other one to really get. Yeah, Burrower Shell. So Burrower Shell, the one that helps you with healing, that wouldn't really help Reckoning all that much. Petrified Scarab with this build is stupidly good. Like, holy crap. If you don't know, you can use Petrified Scarab and Lothebs at the same time. They will give you 140 resistance temporarily. This is just absolutely amazing, especially against elemental shamans, because elemental shamans they don't have the like 65 magic pen. They don't even have 40 magic pen because they can't do the Don Julio's ring for 20 magic pen. That's for priests, warlocks, and mages. So they're kind of stuck running around with like 20 magic pen, I think, at best. And they don't like using Eye of Moab. Instead, they use their Shaman Trinket, which, oh god. Okay, so in Season of Mastery, we got to talk about this. Oh boy, I forgot about this. Let's go. I'll just talk about it real fast. So the Shaman's class-specific BWL trinket says that they increase the amount of like nature elemental damage they do by like 20%. Fuck it, we'll find it. Tools, gear planner, shaman, orc. I might actually have him dressed up. All right. Okay. So right about here, yeah. Yeah. Here's the attunement crystal. Shaman class aligns the shaman with nature, increasing spell damage by 20%, improving healing effects by 20%, and increasing mana cost of spells by 20% for 20 seconds. 5-minute cooldown. This thing, basically you have to bubble against this thing, or you have to have a bunch of nature resist on. This thing is death. This thing is horrifying. Luckily, you can see it when it's being activated. It has a very noticeable visual effect. There's like this green disc, swirly disc that arises. If you see them like some green swirly disc activation thing on them, they're using this trinket. This trinket forces us to bubble. No ifs, ands, or buts. And the reason for that is because it causes their lightning bolt criticals to go from like 1800, maybe 1900 with some other burst trinkets activated to like 2,400. You cannot survive. The burst damage out of them suddenly jumps from like 6,100 to like 7,500. You cannot survive the burst damage coming out of this. You can, but it's just way too costly for you. Don't even bother. If they do it, just bubble against it. End of story. The only other thing you can do against it is nature resist, which is why this brings us back to Paladin stuff. Right? No, we don't want talent calculator. We want gear planner. Tools, gear planner, Paladin, human. Yeah. So this brings us all the way back to Petrified Scarab. So if you're like a Ret Reckoning Paladin, you're like, okay, but honestly, Ret Reckoning Paladin, with this build, you're basically forced to go into AQ to get some gear. The problem with they're having, naturally, is because they go into AQ, they now have access to Avengers and a bunch of other things, right? So you probably can build better builds with Avengers. But let's say you don't want to do that, you're just crazy. This trinket alone shits on Elemental Shamans pretty bad, especially in their burst phase, because as we talked about, they can get this massive damage bonus of 20% from a trinket, but they have very low spell penetration. And because of that, you can usually survive that no problem. Burrow Shell isn't that bad against their burst at all because, yeah, they can purge it, but if they're in the middle of their burst, they're not going to. These two trinkets shit on Shaman. However, AQ is absolutely chocked full. Like, absolutely chocked fucking full of nature resist gear. Like, it is basically drowning in nature resist gear. Like yeah, like this. I just, oh, look, spell damage, damage and healing, attack power, shit tons of stamina, nature resist. So it's very easy that if you want to shit on elemental shamans as any paladin, period, you just put on some Nax resistance gear. You find your petrified scarab. Maybe you find your Lotheb's trinket, and you're good to go. Burrow Shell alone, it's just terrible. So shamans get absolutely crapped on by nature resist gear. But it's not necessary to kill them, is my point. Yeah, so I guess that ends everything I have to say about that. Probably the best and easiest build to get in the entire game for the vast majority of Paladin specs is this one right here. Almost no Paladin in the game laments having Hand of Rag, especially in phase 6. Because the plus 30 fire resist is just worth its weight in gold. You might think Might of Minithil is better. You might think to yourself Dark Edge of Insanity is better. And then you run into like a Fire Mage or some crap, and you're like, you're not lamenting having Hand of Rag at that point. But you can swap weapons, so there's nothing wrong with being in Might of Minithil, running into a Fire Mage and being like, oh, let's get the Rag on there. Yeah. So anyways, amazing build. Love it to death. Still haven't had a chance to see it in action because I don't have my Hand of Rag. I only recently started playing again. I've only been playing for I've done like 5 MCs trying to get Hand of Rag. Haven't gotten anything, but yeah, whatever. Yeah, so that's all I have to say about life in Era for Paladin. If you want to know what it's actually like in Era, there aren't really guilds. Everyone just does GDKPs and does soft reserves. So you'll see like advertisements in chat that say MC ×2 soft reserve. And what that's basically saying is the soft reserve. It'll be like capital SR. And basically what that means is you get 2 dice rolls on any gear that drops out of that raid, period. Only 2 dice rolls. So when I do SR, what I do, or soft reserve, is I'm like, hey, if I drops, I get 2 dice rolls on Eye of Rag. And everyone else in the raid sees that I'm willing to put my 2 dice rolls to Eye of Rag and then nothing else in the entire game. And they won't even compete with me on it. They'll be like, all right, fine, whatever, go ahead, dice roll Eye if you want it that badly. But what that means is if any other item drops in all of MC, I can't roll on it whatsoever. unless nobody else is rolling on it, in which case it usually goes into a free roll, or some people do GDKP on it, but that's usually it's too time expensive, so it just goes into free roll mode. But even that you can GDKP, because whoever wins it, you can just whisper them, hey, I'll give you like X thousand of gold for that item. If you're doing gold farms, you can make about 300 gold an hour. To give you an idea of prices, Eye of Rag goes for like 6,000 gold. Most pieces of gear outside of Nax are fairly cheap. There are a few items in AQ that are expensive as far as gold is concerned, but the vast majority of gold is both made in Nax GDKPs and spent in Nax GDKPs. So let's say you do a Nax GDKP, you don't get anything, but you'll get like 7,000 gold just for doing a Nax GDKP. One of the probably the most expensive item in the entire game is Hungering Cold, that Chad one-handed weapon we were talking about. I saw one of those go for like 72,000 gold. Most items aren't that expensive. Jakova bought the best PvP, or the best trinket, Slayer's Crest, recently. From Nax, he spent like 17,000 gold on that. That was a pretty big buy on his part. He picked up Jom Gobbers, is usually kind of expensive. Yeah, so that's just basically what life is like. People just basically raid log GDKPs, soft reserve, and they slowly build up their gear and blah blah blah. If you want to know what ranking life is like, rank 13 is like 3 weeks of 12 hours a day. That's if it's nasty, or you can 4-week it at like 8 hours a day. I ended up 3-weeking it, but we had a really nasty war, and yeah, blah blah blah. So anyways, I'm going to end the video here, and Deus Vult, boys.